Somebody said Joel was here.
Okay.
Chief, did you see Joel?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if he's in the building, we can just wait for him. Oh, yeah. I did do that.
There it is.
There it is.
Hey.
All right, it's 6:30, so I will call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the animal control issues that our city attorney Jackie has some information, and Chief Atterbury as well. So I will let the two of you take over.
Just introduce it as currently the city has a contract with the county to assist us on animal control services. Our code contemplates in law enforcement officer or animal control officer or designee to handle our animal control, which is in the past couple of years, we've seen an increase in animal control issues with dogs. We had the big incident on Denise with animal hoarding. We've just had that become a larger part of what has been a side duty for law enforcement. You know, our code has a whole chapter on it. The chief, it has, because we've had a chance to partner with Sedgwick County Animal Control, we've had a chance to have lots of conversations with them. And we are now presenting the idea of council of considering allowing Sedgwick County Animal Control to handle animal enforcement. They handle it in all unincorporated areas of the county already, and they do partner with some cities to handle animal control. I've had conversations with the county attorneys, and they're very comfortable in working with us to adopt their code, which we mostly have because of our contract, and handle enforcement on our behalf. So from the legal side, it's possible. We have to work out some items to present a contract that the council would be comfortable with if you want that route. And then Chief can explain from the practical, like how it would actually work side.
Well, Ed, I would add that, you know, our guys and gals, our officers do a really fine job with criminal events, you know, domestic assaults and auto thefts and those things. But the animal control calls are just, it leaves them all uncomfortable. It leaves me uncomfortable because over the last 6 years, I've had to be the decision maker in the euthanization of some animals. And that is just not tops on my list of things to do. I know it's not tops on their list either, but it's something, you know, until I got here in Bel Air that I had never dealt with in my career. But that was a change. Some of the things that I'd like to point out is that animal control has dedicated staff and professionals. They do this all the time. They work with animal calls all the time. And I'm not suggesting that we would not work with animal calls, because we're still going to have that barking dog in the middle of the night, that disorderly conduct type of thing that does butt right up against a criminal act because it's disturbing somebody's peace. And we get a lot of those calls, but we also get the calls of the animals running at large. Now, sometimes those are nice animals. We open up the door, give them a treat, they hop right in. Sometimes you don't have to give them a treat, they hop right in, and we drive them over to animal control. And then there are the others that have teeth and show them, and we are not chew toys. And that's when we need to call upon animal control and their professional staff with their catch poles and their vans with the cages. And we've done that in the past, and they've been extraordinarily helpful to us. We mentioned, Jackie mentioned the hoarder case. We worked hand in hand with animal control in dealing with that terrible situation that involved lots of animals.
167.
167. But because there were so many animals, Nika and crew worked to find a way to pay for that relieved the burden from the city of Bel Air. Correct?
Yes.
So The other thing that it's difficult for our officers for some reason is the animal bite situations. We have a huge ordinance having to do with animals, and it's a step-by-step approach on how that's supposed to work. But there are so many decision trees in that I think it confuses them sometimes. One of the last ones was we got the call on the animal bite. We took the report on the animal bite. They had already taken the animal outside the city to a different location in the county. Still don't know where the animal is. But, you know, I'm uncomfortable that they don't have all the information that we have when we make those reports. It's kind of like a sieve. Sometimes we get them all the information they need, and sometimes we don't. And I hate to admit that, but that's just the reality of my situation as chief and not getting it done all the time. So if we go to enter into a contract with Sedgwick County, I'm comfortable that they will be able to handle those calls from beginning to end with our assistance, them being in full knowledge of the situations as they occur and being able to find a resolution to those cases, probably better than we've done in the past. Because our ordinance is code enforcement officer or chief of police. It says it two ways in there, and or designee. So it's not as clear cut as I would like it to be. And this would make it clearer to everybody on how that would work.
Yes, and also I think the facilities they have are something that's kind of important to consider. And we haven't had to store many animals because of our contract and agreement, but Chief was mentioning that some cities that have that animal enforcement component as a part of their own city are having to meet KDH&E requirements for the storage, the caging, the air conditioning, comfort of animals, and we don't have those facilities in place now.
And we don't want to every year I get about $2,000 in my budget to take care of the animal control things that come up. And it's in your report also every year. The city takes in about $2,000 in I've personally run into it before. You know, if I take the dog to the vet or my wife took the dog to the vet, they would register the dog in Sedgwick County. And then later in the year, I got a letter from Twyla saying, hey, you haven't registered your dog yet. And I went and saw her. I said, yes, I did. Because I took the dog to the vet and I registered that dog. Yeah, but you didn't do it in Bel Air. And I explained that to let you know that I'm not alone. There are many, many people in our city who register their dogs with the vet for Sedgwick County, not realizing they also have to have one or they actually have to have one for Bel Air, and really not for Sedgwick County because we have our own ordinance. By repealing this ordinance, we would remove the necessity to have one, but sometimes out of confusion, two licenses for the dogs, and it would just go to Sedgwick County. Part of that we discussed early on about having an education, you know, making sure the newspaper knows about it. We'd post it online, on Facebook, on the city Facebook, on our department Facebook, to let people know that there's no longer the requirement here in the city, but it would be switched over to Sedgwick County. Yes, please. This is Nika Orbaugh. She's with and
Yep.
supervisor.
Yep, I was just gonna say, their license books, and I can pass this around so you can see. As of January 1st, 2021, we have been dropping them at the small cities that we contract with. We had a bit of a compliance issue that I've been working on, and part of that was there really wasn't an incentive for small cities and veterinary offices to sell the license. It's a paperwork hassle. So now at the bottom, you can see there is an option to add a convenience fee. There is no county restriction on what that convenience fee is. We would recommend something relatively minor in the $1 to $3 range, because they can also go online and buy it for free. I mean, well, not for free, for the regular without the convenience fee. But if that is something the city wants to consider in the future, if people are still showing up and knocking on Twyla's desk and going, hey, I'd like to buy a license here, what you do is fill it out. We have prepaid envelopes delivered to your city hall. Fill it out, you charge the $1, you charge the $2 for them buying it here and you processing it. Then we recommend most people send them in once a month. Like the city of Bentley sends it in once a month, Hayesville, such and such. And then you just pay us through one city check the difference. So if you sell 5 licenses at $12, that's $60. But if you charge $2 convenience fee, you've made $8 off of it, no, $10 off of it. I can do math, I swear. But it's just something to consider, especially if people are used to coming here and getting a license. I wanted to put that out there, that it's not something we offer.
The Sedgwick County license, is that something that all dogs in the county are required to have, even if the cities also issue a license?
It's something all dogs in areas we have jurisdiction over are required to have.
So that's where that confusion comes in. Because the city of Bel Air has our own ordinance governing animals, we collect, or we do the registration. If we did not, and when we repeal, or if we repeal our local ordinance, and we would enter into a contract to go under Code 5 of the county, then we only have to be concerned with one license.
Okay. Is that the main problem that we're trying to solve?
That's one of the problems we're trying to solve.
Because today we have a contract today with animal control so that we can call and ask for services. But in some cases, we handle it ourselves instead of calling.
We have a partial contract, and you can explain the difference maybe between the partial and the.
So the difference between the partial and the full contract is pretty much for the convenience of your citizens. A partial contract, we will only respond to a call from your police department for assistance when police department is on site, period.
Okay.
Full contract is just like your citizens call us directly. We come in, we do trapping, we do removal of feral cats through cat traps, not right now, but when the weather permits, we patrol for friendly dogs, aggressive dogs, pick up dead things in the road. Right now, if Chief wants us to come pick up a deceased possum in the road, he's got to meet us at the deceased possum. That's just the way the contract reads. We do have several cities that are partial service. Hayesville is partial service. They run their own animal control officer. She calls and makes appointments with us to pick up dogs from their shelter that they've held. Then full service, it'd be like the city of Bentley, which is the citizens just call us, Viola, when they have an issue, and we come out and address it directly. There is a billing difference there because I try to keep those people in the loop, but those cities get billed for the calls for animals we bring in for their cities. So they might not know if we pick up 8, 9, 10 stray cats from somebody's house because we're dealing directly with the citizen. And then you get the bill for those intake at the shelter. The way the contract is now with the city kind of has a leash on that, not to put too fine of a job point on it. So if they say, hey, we're not paying for stray cats, we're going to tell our citizen, nope, we're not trapping cats in the city of Bel Air isn't paying for it, then we don't respond because we're not getting that call from the police department.
With a full contract, if the citizen calls 911 because of an animal issue, does dispatch call you directly or do they still call our police department who has to call you?
Theoretically, they call us both. They're supposed to call us because it's an animal-related issue. But I have learned in the last 15 years, I have zero control over what 911 does. Like, absolutely none. So theoretically, they're supposed to notify us both. A lot of times, they just notify us if it's a normal thing. When a contract first switches over, a lot of times they'll notify the police department, and then they'll go, oops, and notify us too. And
Now, citizens, on the other hand, there's a lot of confusion. We have some citizens who know to currently call the police department or call 911, but goodness knows how many calls go directly to, not through the dispatcher, but directly to animal control. And then after they've explained everything, they're told, well, you have to call the city of Bel Air because we have an ordinance of our own. You have to call the city of Bel Air, and they're kind of exasperated, and then they have to call somewhere else and make the call, like explanation again. So that's one thing that, you know, as far as city image goes, that's a concern.
How much time are we talking about our officers saving by not being involved in this?
I don't have those numbers, but we make a substantial number of animal calls throughout the year. We'll do, I think in the past few years, we've had probably 6 to 8 animal bite calls each year, but then the other calls with animals at large and the skunks under the patio and the raccoon in the attic, squirrels in the attic calls, things that we really can't do a lot about. We get those, and then we have to tell them, you know, they have to call a private agency to come out and do that tracking for them because we can't do it.
And our rules on in-home trapping are going to be very similar.
Yeah.
County legal prohibits us from going into or under a structure. So we do make considerations for like open barns and, you know, carports and things like that, of course. We're not trying to be ridiculous about it, but I can't go into anybody's attic and look for raccoons or anything like that. They're always going to be referred to private contractors. It is an important consideration that we're open 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, and 9 to 5 on Saturday. Anything outside those hours is considered an emergency response only. Emergency response is a limited response. That's going to be if the police department calls us, or out in the county, if the sheriff's department calls us on things like code black,
Deceased person.
deceased person, DUI stop with an animal in the car, because it seems like anybody gets intoxicated, they want to take their dog for a ride. Every day, or their bearded dragon, or I had a guy with an albino possum once. Yeah. And they're going to be also things like injured domestic animals. We're not going to come out for injured wildlife in the middle of the night. I know it seems heartless, but it is the circle of life. It is nature. Things like that. We will come out for after hours, but they do have to be at police request. And we do try to work we give out our cell phone numbers unreasonably freely. So we try to work one-on-one with the PD that's on site and say, hey, this is what we can do. This is our response time, because we're always coming from home.
If we repeal our chapter 7 regarding animals, do we lose our ability to control what animals are allowable in the city of Bel Air?
Not at all, no. I would recommend that we would repeal the majority of it and keep the sections that apply to exotic animals, and housing exotic animals like, that allows the pet store to be here. So we would keep certain portions.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be.
But they don't-
For enforcement also.
We do not enforce.
Those against those, yeah, right. Nothing in our code would conflict with the county code as far as we see it now.
One little thing, y'all have some crocodiles here that we were made aware of today. So alligators,
Understand what you said.
You guys have a resident that has some crocodiles as personal pets.
We do?
Oh.
Yep. We were made aware of that today.
We
Um,
Not as part of a business?
No, not as part of the business.
I would need to check the code because I have to check and see where that.
But under our code, if you were to adopt our code, they are prohibited as inherently dangerous animals. So are all types of bears, large cats, and cat hybrids, wolves and wolf hybrids. There's a short list, but it is a pretty obvious list. Crocodiles and alligators are on there, as well as caimans. However, they are sold quite freely at a pet store in Derby. So we do have to remove them from the county occasionally, or invite people to go live in the city of Derby with their crocodile or alligator or whatnot. But yes, we had a gentleman that we had removed his items from the county. He decided to live in Bel Air because they're, in his words, allowed here. And I was like, I don't think that's true,
Yeah.
but you better check.
I think I remember that, whatever the crocodilia or whatever that kingdom of David is, I have to.
Yeah.
look at it.
But that would be the only thing. We are only allowed to enforce chapter 5 of county code. Any other enforcement, as far as what you allow here, would fall to your local police department, of course, your city council. You're free to enforce. But we can only enforce chapter 5.
So what about coyotes, wolves, and kind of those wild animals that come into the city from time to time?
That's gonna fall to us.
I'm sorry?
That's gonna fall to us.
So wolves are a little different because wolves are considered inherently dangerous animals. So we're going to try to trank and trap wolves. I have yet to pull an actual wolf from the wild here in Sedgwick County. We do have reports of coy wolves up north, but I have never seen them. I've heard what people are calling coy wolves, which are a coyote wolf hybrid, but I've never seen them. Coyotes that come are going to be wildlife, unless they are injured or causing an issue within like the city. So if, for say, somebody had them in their garage and it was attacking a cat, we would come and try to track it in that manner because it proves to be an imminent danger. But somebody sees a coyote running down Rock Road, there's just not a lot we're going to be able to do about it. At any given time, I have one person for about every 300 square miles on the street. So our average response time is 30 minutes on break. So I'm never catching up with coyotes. We do offer traps, humane traps. We do give out the numbers of private contractors to deal with them, things like that. Raccoons, possums, we'll trap those all day long. Skunks, we'll set traps all the time for those. That's not a problem. I love my job. I could jabber indefinitely.
So what's the cost difference between the two contracts? One's pay-as-you-go, what are we currently paying in the pay-as-you-go versus the full contract? Is there a separate?
Jackie?
The one that we have now, we pay per incident, right?
Yep.
So we would pay per incident, but now,
How much has that been?
oh, I don't have this.
We didn't bring the number of how much we've been spending currently.
No.
We're budgeted 2,000 and we've never really reached that 2,000.
Okay.
So we would have reached it last year. Well, the Denise call would have
2019.
tripled that. And that's when animal control came and bailed us out with trailers and boxes and cages and.
We leaned on a couple of exterior agencies for that. Out of 160 animals, we used 99.
So they were able to adopt out or
I drove those animals across 3 states.
Yeah.
Personally.
to get them out to good homes.
So we budget 2,000, we don't only spend it, what would be the full contract? Is it different?
So the full contract, we would not be getting that 2,000 in revenue, obviously, because all the registrations would go to the county. And then the expense probably would go up, predicting that a lot of the stray cat calls, a lot of the, the citizen calls would go directly to the county. We don't get one now, but I don't know, Chief, do those calls come directly to your department or do they go to the front desk?
Both. But they end up over at our office.
Okay. So I don't know about average how many calls we're getting coming in, but I would imagine they would go up with the county being available.
Right now, it's $29 per animal that we take in. So, there is the strong possibility going forward that is going to be raised, not by us, by the shelter. We bill out to cities exactly what we get billed from the shelter. The shelter right now wants to raise our prices to $79 an animal. The county has been fighting that for 1.5 years. But the way the contracts are phrased, you get billed what you get billed for your city. So the option, if that goes up, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jackie, there's a 30-day and out notice at the base of the contract.
Right.
So if our prices go up and you guys are like, we're out, then you have every right to say that. But I would expect, because the way the shelter works, and the shelter is not controlled by us. I feel the need to explain that. We have zero control over the Wichita Animal Shelter, but that's who we contract with to house our animals. If you guys say, nope, $79 isn't gonna cut it, and you wanna break ties, that's up to you guys. If that happens, if we can't argue our way out of it with our legal and their legal. But if that does happen, I would expect for your citizens to probably be denied at the shelter dropping off their own animals. Because what they do is the same thing they've done with like the city of Mays. They stop accepting animals from cities that won't pay for boarding at the shelter, or cities that aren't contracted with us.
So really what we're looking at is service delivery to our citizens, cost, right? So with this full contract, there is no cost other than putting them in the shelter. So,
And that shouldn't really be any more than what we're spending now, because there's not gonna be a big increase of animals going to the shelter if we open up to citizens calling, because they're calling us to be the intermediary to get them out.
So I thought there might be some monthly fee, or, like, partial contract is pay as you go, full contract is not. So full contract, we're saying, is still pay as you go. The payment structure is the same, except instead of them calling us, they call them directly. We're kind of more hands off on the situation. Is that a proper summary?
It would be more like both full and partial or pay as you go.
Yeah.
But the freedom for citizens to utilize the service of animal control directly instead of having us as the intermediary to make that happen.
Right.
And then taking our officers to sit by an animal and wait for them to show up.
so really the issue that it gets down to is, how important is animal control to our citizens? If they want better service, then we would be full service with the county. That allows citizens to call the county whenever they're open, that there's a dog at large, or there's skunk in their backyard, or whatever it may be. Now, is our cost gonna go up? Probably, and that would be because citizens would be using it more. The issue that we run into, and Diane's here and can speak of that, but there's issues with animals, and right now, because of our partial contract, they'll call the city, either the front office or PD, and say there's an animal at large. Well, at that point, if one of our officers is available to go find out where it's at, then they'll go do that and see if they can get it in the car and then take it to the shelter. They take it to the shelter, we still have to pay for that. But a lot of times, they're not available to go find this dog that's running at large. So the dog takes off, and then we get a call back, the dog's still out there. Well, we don't have an officer to go pick it up. And so in this situation, they would simply call animal control. Our officers wouldn't have to handle that unless it was after hours. And again, it would be based on whether they had the ability to do it.
In that situation you just described, why would we not be having our officers call Sedgwick County Animal Control today instead of trying to handle that?
Because the partial contract only outlines certain things that they'll do. And if running at large, is not one of them.
We will
Okay,
pick up from,
Yep. So we would have to pick it up.
And
hold
I'm
it
here
up,
to tell you,
and
some of
they-
those dogs are fast and I'm old.
I thought I was understanding that if we had an animal issue of any kind today, as long as our police called, that was part of our partial contract.
we need to, wherever, now, if they wanna sit with the dog and say it's there in the field, I mean, or the other day, you helped me pick up a pig that was out in a field, and they had it on a leash, which is great, but you know, if I'd gotten there and there was a pig in the field, and she's like, pig in the field, then that's fine. Our contract specifies we meet them at their request for assistance. It's great if he puts a leash on it with a sheriff's deputy and, you know, does a rodeo, that's marvelous. But if not,
Little grief.
So
Yeah.
is this
39 years, it was a first.
Is this annual contract an annual fee, or is it just pay as you go as well?
yes,
It's just that the frequency probably will increase because our police will not be involved.
Well, but I also think we're gonna have less response if we go with them, because she says they work 8 to 5, they don't work weekends. Our police work 24/7.
we work 9 to 5 on Saturdays.
And we make a lot of the calls anyway. There are, let's see, pit bulls. I'm not inviting a pit bull to sit in my car. I've had some bad experiences, but I can get them cornered in a yard or cornered in a spot so that they're in a location where they can come and get them. We still respond to things, and we will continue to respond to calls for assistance having to do with animals, even the dogs running at large after hours, because like most people, our officers don't want to deal with a dog that's been hit by a car. So we try to get them collected as best we can, keep them away from the major thoroughfares, and get them, at least if we can, into somebody's backyard. If they've left the gate open, sometimes it happens, so that we can get them secured so they can come out and collect them. And it wouldn't be that much different.
It really
In the
wouldn't be
future.
that much different.
I'm not saying we
So-
wash our hands of animal
So
control
if
and be
there's a
done.
loose dog at 9 o'clock at night, you're still gonna be the one that chases it down, pins it down, and then calls them and waits for an hour or 2 hours until one of them shows up. Right?
Depending on the temperament of the dog, yes.
So that really doesn't gain us anything, is what I'm.
Oh, the police have to deal with less calls, right? So if they call the Sedgwick County directly, our police are going to get less calls. So from 9 to 5, Monday through Saturday, people aren't gonna necessarily call our cops, they call Sedgwick County directly, so our police have to be involved in less things. They still get involved in stuff, because unfortunately, the police get stuck with everything that nobody wants to do. But, they will get stuck with a lot less of things.
And the majority of our calls are during the day, having to do with running at large, when people are out and they see them. After, in the evening, after dark, people are inside, they don't see them as much. They may still be running at large, but they're not seen, so we don't get those calls. The calls that we do have are going to be like Mika explained. We stopped the guy with the boa constrictor out for his evening drive, or whatever animal. We've had traffic crashes where we've had animals in the car, and because of the excitement, they won't let anybody near them except these folks. And they're able to take that dog, secure it for the owner, and that relieves us of the need to try to wrangle an upset animal. And we like that, because we're not chew twists.
I would also advise that the contract is yet to be written. We've come to most terms, and the terms are similar to what you're talking about, where it would be pay as you go. And we try to keep it as close to the current rates as possible. So that's going to be a negotiating point that we would start with, but I don't want you to think the contract exists and it's going to look a certain way. It's going to be drafted.
And the reason that there's likely not to be an annual fee in that contract is because now citizens will be registering their pets with Sedgwick County, and Sedgwick County will collect a fee from that, which covers the base operating costs of that engagement. Is that a
Yes.
fair assessment?
Right. And that with other cities, as far as we know, they haven't assessed
Yeah,
that
I
annual
can-
fee.
I can speak to that, and then I have no control over anything legal does, but legal in 15 years has not written a contract for Sedgwick County Animal Control that requires annual fee of any kind.
That's a good way.
We make our profit by our licenses, and it is ridiculous to call what we make profit. It is a very, very, very small amount of money. And what we end up billing the cities for each month is break dead even. Like, we will send you a list of the dogs we picked up, the cats we picked up. This is what we got charged for them at the bottom. That's just, it's reimbursing us for what the shelter charges us. That's all it is.
And I noticed on the registration forms that you passed around, it says that residents that fail to register their dogs within 30 days will be mailed a citation.
Correct.
I know the situation that the chief just described where Twyla sent a nice note and said, hey, I think you forgot to register your pet. Can you please do that? Is that the same type of experience that residents will have with the county, that they'll get a nice friendly letter before they get a citation?
So what happens is if they get this, that means that they have been to a veterinary office or approved rabies vaccinations somewhere and said, I got my rabies vaccination and I was informed I had to buy a county license. Then they get a copy of this and the vet sends us in that says, hey, they got a rabies vaccination here. If we don't receive anything within 30 days from the way, and keep in mind, we already get them 30 days late. So for example, I was processing licenses today that were vaccinated in January, like 4th through the 15th. So I'm already getting them late. So I have 30 days from the date I get them. So on March 9th, those people that had their dogs vaccinated January 4th through the 15th will get a letter from the county. And it's a 1-page simple notice. If I would have thought, I would have brought you a copy. And it says, hey, we got information that said your dog was vaccinated. And it has the vaccination information at the top. And it has an invoice and it says, this is how much you owe, and an envelope. And it says, please remit payment. And then if they don't within 30 days, they get a second letter and it says, hey, we sent you an invoice. What's up? And if they still don't within 30 days after that, so now we're at 4 months, they get a phone call and we say, hey, I don't know what's going on. Maybe you didn't realize you were supposed to buy a license. I sent you this letter and maybe Fido ate them. But we have an automated system now. So after I sent that invoice and then that letter, the next 30 days, so at 5 months, it kicks a ticket out. And I don't have squat to do with it. I don't pull them out of the system. So that's how those run. And the only way the only way it really gets to that is if they are persistently dodging me. And when we first upgraded the system in September of last year, we had some dodgers. And I tell you, the system started kicking those tickets out, and we don't really have that issue anymore. I think the veterinary offices started taking us seriously, and when I said it's automated, I will say specifically though, I have never denied a reasonable request to waive a license. I do have that ability for up to 1 year. I've had people call that lost their job, people call that were hairdressers and restaurant workers, and I verified that sort of thing. So county's not out to be heartless. We're all people too. But if they'll just talk to me, we'll be fine.
Well, I could just see this being confusing, especially like the situation that the chief described. You may leave the veterinarian's office and not think you've got anything else to do. And so if it were a situation where a ticket just automatically kicked out after 30 days, that probably wouldn't be an experience that I would be excited about conveying upon folks here in Belden. So it sounds like that's not what would happen. And so it sounds like a very thorough process.
Yeah, it's not exactly what happens, but it's what's supposed to happen by county ordinance, so that's why it's on there. County ordinance says if we don't remit payment within 30 days, they're supposed to get a ticket. It's a ticketable offense. But that is not the way I choose to run a department where I'm going to answer the phone. So
Can you describe how when they do get a ticket, where the the jurisdiction occurs, is that Sedgwick County District?
Yep, when they do get a ticket, it will direct them downtown to the county courthouse. We are at the old county courthouse on the 3rd floor. Court is held on Mondays at 1:30. We generally, I've had it happen probably twice in the last year, but generally, nobody gets a ticket that doesn't know it's coming. Everybody knows it's coming by a long shot. Our tickets, we're working on getting our fines raised. Our fines are not comparable with other areas our size, but our fines for basic harbor and nuisance animal right now are $75 a count, with $20 court costs. They can receive multiple counts per citation. I think the biggest ticket I ever wrote was about $10,000. And the smallest ticket I ever wrote was $50 plus court costs. $10,000 went to a lady who wanted to live and die on a molehill with the free range law and graze her 93 head of cattle somewhere where they weren't supposed to be, and she wasn't going to take them home. So she got a ticket. But most of our tickets run between $95 to $300, depending on what it is. It is not written anywhere in our ordinance, but it is general departmental policy to give people a warning. We're going to come out, we're going to talk to you, we're going to say, hey, this is what's up, this is how it is. We are going to attempt, if you will take it from us and our home, to give you a written copy of what we're talking about, or tape it to your door. And then after that, if you get a second offense that we witnessed, generally, if it is substantial, you're going to get a ticket. If it's like Fido sitting in your own front yard, not tethered, but he's not going anywhere, we're probably not going to cite you right then. But if Fido's back eating your neighbor's chickens, then yeah, you get a ticket and Fido's going to go to doggy jail. When that happens, they come down for an arraignment. The arraignment, it's just like any other court. You can plead guilty, not guilty, or no contest, or they can choose to pay the fines and never appear. If they pay the fines and never appear, they can enter guilty or no contest online or over the phone. They do have a right to trial. We do bench trials. They can hire a lawyer if they want. They don't have to hire a lawyer, but they can. We do have people show up with lawyers quite a lot, which seems a large expenditure for a $95 ticket, but it's not my money.
Jackie, with those, I assume being criminal offenses, are people entitled to representation, and do those costs get rebuilt to the city if so?
Those costs should directly go to the person, and they're not, it depends on, the misdemeanors are low enough, I think, in the city,
And-
they're class C, so they're not.
Okay.
If I caught what you were getting at
Jail.
correctly, the city is out of it at that point, and this all happens at the county, on the county side.
Right,
So there's no exposure on the city side.
I know,
Traffic
right,
prosecutor's
but
gonna
the
be-
county does not treat it like a jailable offense, it's a misdemeanor below that. But I think it's an important pinpoint in the conversation, because currently right now, I can, Councilmember Schroeder answer that our prosecutors spent about 6 hours on animal enforcement at $125 an hour billed to the city last year. It was my time behind that, kind of shadowing that process. Chief's time writing up reports and adjudicating, officer time testifying in court, court time, court staff time, for 2 cases specifically that had to be handled through Bel Air Municipal Court. So we definitely had plenty of staff time, I would say, on that. That entire project would be shifted to, the county's animal process that Nika just described.
but because of the level of these crimes, court-appointed attorney fees aren't things that will be a problem.
Correct.
If we have anything that we get involved in that's above a class C misdemeanor, it gets kicked over to the sheriff's department or local police department. If we were called out to a case in Bel Air, hypothetically, that a man stabbed his dog, that is a criminal case at that point. I would talk to my officer on scene. I'd call Chief Atterbury. I'd say, you need to call your city attorney. This is a criminal, he acted with malice and he decided, since his dog peed on the floor, he was gonna stab. I have had that case and it went to the sheriff's department. So, but that is not something, that is something where we would still collect evidence, we would still photograph, we would still offer support. But any criminal prosecution, that's gonna be above what we are able to provide.
So to maybe, I'm gonna give a shot at a summary here. What we're saying is, the cost is, we're not gonna collect a couple $1,000s in things that we're not gonna get. So we're gonna spend $2,000 in the money not collected, maybe another $1,000 in extra things, maybe not, but some money a little bit. So maybe we're talking about a max $3,000 expenditure. The benefits being, we don't ever are gonna have any of those costs as far as our lawyers and whatnot. So there's a little bit of savings there, however much that would be. But it seems like the real benefits are tangible. We're hoping this is going to be better service for our citizens. There's no real reason to get our police who probably stink at this and did not become policemen in order to chase animals. So they're probably not good. So we're hoping this is going to be a bit better for our citizens. And also this should cut down on police officers' work time. They should, we should be putting a little bit, police officers can spend other time on this and therefore our staff time is reduced. So we're spending, in my opinion, we're talking about $3,000 to reduce the amount of police staff time and therefore putting less pressure on any future hiring beyond what we've already budgeted for police officers possible. It was just a small amount, whatever it is. I mean, I don't know what it is, but it's not a lot.
And to your previous question, I crunched some numbers here. If everybody who is supposed to buy a license in the city of Bel Air for their dog does so, and I mean, buys it from the county, about $700 income. Now we had Twyla, she gave me an estimate that about 200 people didn't register their dogs. Then that 7,700 would be down to about 5,300 that the county is going to realize from the transition.
Sure,
So-
but we only realized 2,000 because we don't send you around chasing people to houses to make them register. We don't have a mechanism particularly to do that.
Well, we only realized 2,000 also because it's free for people with dogs that are neutered.
Right.
And those people are gonna have to start paying a fee, so there's gonna be more money going to the county.
But they can do that at their
So it's
vet
gonna-
clinic.
It's gonna be an onus on the citizens that are they getting it for free now?
And how long do you
So
have
just
to,
because the city's not paying, doesn't mean the people of the city aren't paying.
and they have to do that every year?
Yep, once a year. It expires the date your rabies vaccination expires. We do offer 3-year licenses because 3-year rabies vaccinations for dogs are now a thing. We don't license cats and we don't track rabies vaccinations on cats outside of citable offenses. So if your cat bites somebody and they are not vaccinated for rabies, then chances are you'll get a ticket for that because we do cite when animals bite people, penetrating bites to people, we are going to cite. Unless it's in defense of the owner's property or the owner on property. So if someone breaks into your house and your dog bites them, good boy. So,
You said one thing in there that has bothered me ever since I found out it happened, which has been years and years and years. They do not license cats. And cats are the one thing that are always in my yard. That if anything should be gotten rid of, it's them. So I don't understand why we don't license cats. They need rabies shots just as much as anybody else, and I don't see why they don't need a license. Now, I can see the argument about not putting it on their neck, but that's only because they go out and run around the neighborhood. So.
and while I don't particularly disagree with you, it is not something that's a standard in animal services to do nationwide. It's just not really done. So I don't have a really good argument or answer for you. It would be a source of revenue, but we do offer, well, we did in 2020, so everything's on the table because of COVID, but we do try to offer yearly rabies clinics. Cats are included in those. We do promotional material both to children in schools and people in the community to get them to vaccinate their cats. We do a lot of work with feral cat programs to try to get cats vaccinated. The entire time I've worked for Sedgwick County, all my rabies suspects have been skunks and cats. And so it is a problem.
So,
One thing that I wanted to hit on was education. If you were to repeal our ordinance, decide to go with Sedgwick County Services, what would the education to citizens be? We talked at one point about sending out flyers and notices to.
So that's something that I would have to get, probably, it sounds like Twyla's the lady to talk to, but that's something I would have to get with you guys and sit down and talk about. Whoever the representative would be to help design something, either for your local newspaper to put out, or something like that. You could put something on your website. We do have a website that we can post on, if that's something you want us to do, to put it out that way. What we would do is we would go around and notify all our vet clinics, specifically the Northside Vet Clinic, and say we are taking over licensing for the city of Bel Air. That way they know. The vet clinics are where we catch people, because the vet clinics, 9 out of 10 licenses I get are from vet clinics. And it's just vet clinics trying to help their clients out so they don't get messed up at the back end. Because it is $12 for a spayed or neutered dog. That's a $50 ticket plus $20 in court costs if you get caught without it. Generally, if you get caught without it and you fix it before court, you have it dismissed. Because, well, we don't see a dime for those fines. So we're like, we just want you in compliance so we can all move forward with our lives. We're not out here to jam people up, and it's not like I have a quota to make to infuse my budget.
So are you guys seeing any negatives other than the, what Councilman Welch noticed, as far as there might be people that have to pay for registration of spayed and neutered animals, or what other any of these are things?
And it's less for the non-state animals, which I think was a great thing Bel Air did, was to jack that rate up, because if you want to have a non-spayed animal, you ought to be paying more, because those are the ones that want to get out and run around the neighborhood to find a partner. And just to put it bluntly.
And they do, and I 100% agree with you, sir. I really do. We do have an animal control advisory board. Those numbers have been the same for over 20 years. Yeah, 22 years. They've been the same for, and we have requested a couple of times to our animal control advisory board that they look at raising them. If you guys decide to go under contract with us, I can notify you when the advisory board is held, and you can send a representative to say, we'd like to see these get raised. Because I know our department would not oppose that for the specific reasons that you discussed. If you're going to choose to have a breeding animal, you need to pay to have that, because there's really no good reason for that. There really isn't.
Well, and if you're selling the dogs that you breed, you're making money, so it's just a business cost at that point.
Let's just, is it clear that each spayed or neutered dog is $12, each unspayed and unneutered dog is $22 with the county?
We're at 22 with the county, but it's 50 through Bel Air right now.
Right, correct.
And it's spayed or zero, which I thought was a good idea too. I mean, it's an encouragement to get your animal fixed.
Any other questions of Nika or me or Jackie?
Crocodiles are banned in Bel Air. Code 711, section 4. Crocodiles and
I will get that gentleman's answer to you tomorrow. We have it in the office. We were just discussing it today when I said we were coming down here. And said, well, gosh, they really need to get rid of crocodiles in Bel Air.
We made a provision.
gotta
know about them.
Yeah. There's a process for that.
that was not for.
Not
Yeah,
for
that was
residents.
just for the one store to have them
Right.
on display.
Exactly, educational displays.
It was an educational display, it wasn't for pets.
So how do you feel about, would you like to start this and review a contract, or how would you like us to move forward?
Well, from what I'm hearing, I think it's positive because it gives the police the tools they really need, which they don't have right now. you still be involved, it will reduce your time that you have to spend with it. And of course, these people have the expertise and ability and the equipment to take care of runners a lot better. So I think it's a very positive thing to do. And I would be.
Could we get a contract for more involvement from county animal control without going full tilt? Is there some halfway? I want to free up the police officers too. I don't want them doing animal control.
Okay.
But it sounds like they're still going to be involved no matter what. So I don't know if we're really going to see the savings that we want to see from it.
What I'm thinking is, it sounds like a good idea to me. I'm kind of thinking we should try it for a year and see what the results are and revisit it in a year. The only potential downside that I really see is potentially a little less direct city local control over the enforcement and judicial process around animal enforcement.
And with that, they're going to have numbers of people who drop off animals, the animals we drop off, and we'll have those. We'll be able to compare the calls they have versus the calls we receive and respond to. Because, if we move forward, then we'll be able to track and have some real areas to track from.
The impact on TED staff as well, taking those calls and licensing fees and all that as well.
So would we only be looking at a 1-year contract, or would we look at something else if we?
It sounds like we'd only want to do a 1-year contract with a 30-day termination option, is what I'm hearing right now.
I think that's right. I seems like a positive to me. I think we're not trained to do it. It's not something we're good at. We want to push it towards someone who is trained to do it. If we were a larger city, Hazel's decided to hire their own animal control person. I have zero interest in doing that. So I think it sounds like a positive. I think Councilor Welch brings up some good points. And I think doing it for a year allows us to reevaluate. Maybe people go, listen, it hasn't changed. We do the same as we always do, or whatever. And we'd really like to bring that incentive back. And we'll know in a year, I think.
And we could probably do a review in early January.
What kind of grandfathering do we do? Because Bel Air just had everybody sign up again for this year. And so are they all going to get free licenses through the county, or is the county going to come out in May and say, oh, you got to pay us $12 now because the county's in charge?
I was thinking we write it in very clearly, beginning January 1, 2022. So we finish on the year educating and advising people of the contract, and we work with the counties.
Okay, and still that kind of leaves a gap, because if I take my dog in June for his annual,
Right.
then do I owe on January 1st?
Right.
Well, if I might, out of the 441 people who got licenses, only 41 had to pay.
Right, but now they're all gonna have to pay.
Right, but it's not that they're already out money, because they didn't have to pay anything when they got the
That's true, but they're
program.
under the condition now, they believe they are good for all
I
of
understand.
2021.
Which is
Yeah.
okay, so write the contract where they can phase in starting June 1st of this year.
So if I could interject, our licenses expire when the rabies vaccine expires. That's why we deal so much with veterinary clinics. So we're not going to know about or track people from your database until they go in to get their rabies vaccine updated. Once they go in to get their rabies vaccine updated, they would be asked to buy a county license. We are not going to go out and mess with people that are in your database and say, hey, you have a license that says it's good from Bel Air Health, but now you have to buy ours too. I don't have the staff to do that. I don't have the information to do that. And it doesn't make enough money to do that.
You still kind of got a little bit of the issue even with that, because, if I took my dog in January of this year, I'm gonna get hit right off the bat next year. And if my dog just went in December, I get like 2 years free, basically. So,
I think it would depend on if you got a 1-year vaccine or a 3-year vaccine.
well, yeah, and if I even got a 3-year, if I got a 3-year in December for my dog, do I not owe again until?
That's what she's saying.
I don't have the ability to track you until you go to the vet again. So I'm not gonna come knock on doors to try to find you. Until you go get your rabies vaccine, unless your dog gets out. Now, if your dog gets out, I'm darn well gonna tell you, you need to get updated in a county license. But
So
again,
I need to make
that's,
sure my dog gets a 3-year vaccine this year is what you're saying.
Absolutely. Good for you.
Don't
You're
let that
paying
dog
enough
out.
attention, good for you.
yeah, I'm not gonna come banging on doors. I have 4 officers for the county. I don't have time to walk up and down the streets of Iron banging on doors, not for $12.
Okay, I'm just looking out for the guy that's gonna get the first person that's gonna get hit with it. And he's
Yeah.
gonna be surprised. He's gonna, well, how come it's me? You know?
I get that, I understand that, but I hope it assuages some concern that the process that I explained to Mr. Smith here about, I mean, I have 5 months of letters before I'm sending people tickets. We go above and beyond. I have sent people to people's houses to say, I'm sorry, are you perhaps unable to get to the phone? I want to come to you in person. And the post office loses mail sometimes. Maybe you're not getting it. Maybe you have a PO box. Maybe mail's been shut off. That happens a lot more, I would think, in rural communities than it does in Bel Air, but it does happen. So,
Okay, well then, we'll start working, we said, her group and Jackie with the county attorneys to get something drafted for you. Not sure that we'll have a next meeting, but maybe a meeting after that or something, we get all the details worked out.
Very good. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your input and your time. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, this is pretty bad.
oh, I figured I'd leave it with,
That's probably 50 people.
I'm ordering.
But we just need 41.
Was serialized?
They are not.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of looked at that, I was thinking, I want the top one.
Actually, when they get sent in to us, they do get a tag, an actual tag in the mail that has a number that renders back to our database. So in case your dog should ever get out,
How does that relate to the tag you get from the vet? It's my tag.
the tag you get from the vet is also put into our database, so the 2 numbers are linked. But the tag we send you is searchable by any of our employees. The tag you get from the vet, we can only search if we call the vet. So,
We got the same thing with Bel Air, and I always wonder if I put too much stuff on his neck. Because I just got you, really.
well, thank you guys for having me.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate the opportunity to talk.
See you later for the dogs, right? So that we can find out 24/7. Lost dogs, straight up. They're right here, yeah. I'll talk to you. We'll talk about that. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is staff compensation. And Henry and Kyle Asher are here to talk about those. So I'll let them take over from there.
So I'll start us off, and Ted is the detail finance guy. But, so we started this process last fall, talking about, our compensation to our employees. We were concerned about police officers, losing police officers, retaining good employees, those types of things. So actually contracted with WSU to do a salary study for us. And so basically in your packet, there was some information. They looked at a number of different cities, comparable sizes, and put together a proposed salary schedule that's different than ours. And really, if you look specifically, because the big question is, how much is this going to cost us and what needs to be adjusted? So one of the things that we found, which was, I think, a suspect of the council, is that basically all of our positions in the police department were below the average. So really what we found from the comparables was that was primarily where most of our deficiency were. There were some deficiencies in supervisor pay. And again, I think Ted and I talked about why that would be. And on several occasions, we promoted within. And so we took maybe a line employee made them a supervisor, or a supervisor went to a director in a couple positions. And so what we did was we gave them a raise from what they were making, but we didn't look at what that same position was making other places as a supervisor. And so that's where we have some deficiencies as well. So really, we then looked at, okay, a number of the positions, they were recommending 10% increases. And so Ted put together, okay, if we took the positions that they were recommending some pay increases, what's that going to cost us? And so that was in your proposed, and I think it was what, about 120,000, Ted, is that?
Yeah, but 118.
Yeah. So the other issue that came up that we wanted to look at is benefits. And we wanted to see, how do our benefits compare to other cities? And what we found out was we have probably the best, or one of the best, benefits. And of course, that's always a good selling point, is to say that you have great benefits. And so, so then Ted and I said, okay, well, when we're looking at salaries, you also have to look at benefits. So we estimated what type of monetary value does that benefit have over what the comparable cities were. So Ted came up with, and again, benefits are based on your age, the number of people that are in your plan, et cetera, et cetera. So it could be anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 per year per employee, depending on if they have a lot of kids or their age and such. So what he did was then he took, okay, their recommendation was X% or X dollars, and then we subtract out that additional benefit so that we're looking at the true package of what the benefits they're receiving and what the pay they're receiving. And so that was part of that, that decision of what is that going to cost us. So those were the things that we looked at, and the dollars that you saw, and based on these, the new pay scale. And the last thing we had them look at, because that was something council talked about, was longevity. Again, the goal is to have people stay. And so they kind of came up with a couple options, and so we looked at, it's typically based on years of service. And that was something else that council could consider as well. So that's what you had in your packet. We don't have the final report, although the information that we got from WSU will be included in that final report. So we're not asking to make any decisions. We just wanted to roll out, this is what we heard from them. This is what our recommendation, this is what our costs are. And then we want to hear from you, where, are you comfortable? Do you see changes you think we need to consider? Ted, what did I miss? Anything else you wanted to add?
No, you kind of covered it. And again, the whole benefits, how you want to consider that in a compensation plan is very difficult for a finance guy. I know we considered it, but it's not really wrapped up in that $118,000, because I didn't think, not all our employees take the benefits, so it's really hard to say you only get a 3% increase because you take our pay. And I think there's a lot of payroll or human resource law on that issue, because it is a benefit. So I don't want to be in that position. So the 118 would be a 10% type with all the recommendations. So if you guys chose that route, if you wanted to include some form of, because we have better benefits, I would suggest a different way of doing that other than punching someone for basically taking the benefits. It would be more of a restructuring. You guys tell us, let's look at a restructure, than that type of format. So Todd was pretty much right. We had it on a column right next to it, but we didn't exactly include it in that calculation.
So something that, I was just gonna say, something that would be helpful for me is if you could, as I look at this pay scale, if you could just maybe walk me through, when somebody gets hired, how do you think about where they're at on this pay scale? And then when do people get raises and bonuses, and what does that whole process look like as we think about employee compensation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what this is basically a framework. So again, we look at, okay, so, a city arborist. So that ranges from 30 to 43, and there's 16 steps in there. So we may say the average is in the center of 35. So that position goes open. One of the other public works employees says, I want to be the arborist. And we say, well, they've done a great job. They're very interested, but they don't really have any experience. We could send them to some schooling and stuff. But they're a great employee. They would do well. They just need some training. So we would say, okay, well then let's start that person maybe at 30 or 31 at the bottom, because they're a good employee, but they don't have the experience that we want. However, that position comes open and the city arborist from Derby applies. And they've got, 5 years of experience and a BA in whatever arborist would have. And then we would say, they really bring a lot. It saves us in training and stuff. So we were paying 35. So maybe that pay would be 35. Or, could we, if that's what they're making in Derby, but maybe if we offered them 36 and we've got better benefits, they would consider coming here. So that's how we look at work. So not every person is going to start at step one.
But everyone starts at one of these discrete steps.
Yes, everyone will start.
Not ever in between the steps. Always exactly at one of the steps.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
They'll start on one of those steps. And then the other piece of it is, so let's say what we typically do too is we always have a 6-month probationary period. So a lot of times what we'll do is we'll say, we want to make sure you're the right employee. So we're going to start you out at step 4. And after 6 months, you've reached your probationary period. You've done a great job. We want you to stay. We'll give you a step increase. As to let them know that we appreciate them. They've done a good job. We want them to stay. And then after that, it's basically the step increases are done with you all in the budgeting process. So you'll budget for a 3% or a step increase or whatever based on however you decide. And then we'll do the annual evaluation, and then they would move up a step.
When you do that 3% increase, does that move these scales, or you do that outside of these scales?
So yes.
We've since I've been here since 2016, it's always just been a step, which is 2.5% in between each step. So yes, you guys can dictate 2-step. That's more or less, that's what I would recommend in the budget process.
We don't change these scales.
We don't change the scales. You guys control the structure. So that basically, you set a framework for Ty to follow. He can't give my utility clerk, over the scale amount, and that's how you guys control payroll costs. So that's what's most important, and I'll kind of elaborate on what this does. This new pay scale does. Our old one, a police officer could potentially start right out of a young guy right out of college that went to get trained could start at step 1, which is $16, our old scale. He could have met a friend at the what do you call that, training center? Training academy, and they stay in touch. And his friend got a job in Park City. He started at 18 because their scale is higher. So that's kind of what we're fighting with this pay scale and coming to you guys is say, hey, we got to keep pace with all these other cities in that, mainly in that starting, and plus what happens is so the guy from Park City or another city starts at 18. In a year's time, he's going to move a step. So he's going to be 1850, where our guy is now at 1650 or 17. So he'll never be able to catch up. And that's what we're finding with some of our mid-tier guys is there's no way they can catch up with that 2.5% step. So what we do in our what we take their knowledge of the salary study, say, hey, we got to move some of our middle guys so that they catch up with that field, if that makes sense.
So is there ever a situation where an employee gets a step increase that isn't part of the council approved broader everyone gets a step increase plan?
The only time that would take effect is if someone took on more responsibility. Or a different job.
Okay.
So, we may have like the front counter person, we have an opening as utility clerk. So she would say, okay, I want to move to utility clerk, and so that pay is going to be different. So then she would get a 2 or 3 step or move to a different scale because a different job.
But we wouldn't say, wow, our equipment operator 2 has done an incredible job this year and really, stepped up his knowledge and skills and has done amazing work. And so therefore, we're going to give him an extra step increase based on his performance.
Then you have the second operator too, who does half as good a job and really just is not doing as well as the other operator too, and we're just gonna keep his pay right there, because he just hasn't earned a step increase compared to the other one who's just earned 2. Are we not allowed to do that, or don't do that?
We can do that, and usually what we try to do is tie it to some type of accomplishment. So in other words, like what Justin's saying is, okay, so equipment operator 1 has these responsibilities and is at this pay. Well, they go get a CDL, which is great for us. So we may say, okay, well, you got your CDL, we'll move you 2 steps because you met something, or our water operator, they have things like that. So really
It's more about certifications or credentials than contributions in those scenarios.
Right.
The other problem is they gotta stop by my office when they do that too, so that puts a little bit of a, and again, it goes back to last January where we said, hey, we have to set our budget for in the previous, August, for all this stuff that's gonna happen, and that's kind of why you'll read in some of my reports, we do kind of end up with a little extra money inside of our personnel because I budget full employment, whereas now we have 2 police officers' jobs that's going unfilled, so that's just savings, so I don't try to over budget on personnel, but that's the hardest thing to determine, especially for a city, is who's gonna leave this year, who's gonna, that type of thing. So when we talk these numbers, a lot of times what I do is, yes, we gotta make sure we're within our structural balance of every fund we have, but we understand that there's gonna be that, $30,000 to $40,000 buffer in my budget versus actual at the end of the year, just in the way we do now. During our budget process, we can talk about if we wanted to under budget some of that stuff, but that's for another day.
So, there's some talk in Washington DC about raising minimum wage to $15 an hour. Don't know that it'll ever happen, but there's talk. And probably not anything you've given much consideration in here, but just kind of maybe want to be thinking about that. What would that do to us if we had to do something?
Yeah, we're fortunate enough as a city, and I know, I'll say this delicately, a lot of our jobs are very technical and skilled jobs. Even Twilis, she can walk you through the whole permitting process, every one of our positions is kind of over the $15 threshold, the full-time wise. Now, rec center, some of the part-times, really you're not talking a large increase because we still start them off pretty well. But yeah, I'm not too concerned about raising the minimum wage, especially with our regular employees. They're all start over that now.
So something when I was looking over this earlier that I'm a bit frustrated with is I get you did a really good job representing the overall picture. This is going to cost $118,000. Wichita State recommended this, or whatever, the state recommended this. I am massively fuzzy on the details of which positions are underpaid and which ones are changing and all those details. I mean, we've gone in detail about the police situation. I'm totally empathetic there, but otherwise, I totally have no idea what we're even recommending other than the number and things that are not one-time payments but ongoing costs are a very big concern for me. And so, not being able to know the details, I'm frankly not even comfortable fully discussing this because I don't feel like I actually have the information that I need to even make a decision on this, or even discuss it fully. I mean,
Yeah, so really the things that to look at, if you wanted to see, Ted, was this all that we had in the packet?
That's the scale.
That-
And then we also,
Yeah.
yeah, I can walk you through it a little bit. Without getting into, Chief Atterbury, that, if you look at this page right here, on the far right-hand side, you'll see minimum 10% increase. That's a Wichita State projection, or recommendation for a minimum 10% increase for that position. And you can go down this scale. I'll save you the suspense. So our average police officer makes around $40,000, 10% for them is $4,000. Our directors are, so that's, let's say roughly $50,000. On the other side, you have a lot of our department directors that, if you walk down the scale, there's around 10%. That's probably about another $50,000, if not, so.
Seems like a breakdown of all those things would have been pretty easy to create, right? Can we get something like that? Like this position, we don't have to put the person's name on it, but this position paid this before, we're recommending you pay this now. This position made this before, we're recommending we pay this now. I feel like that seems like a pretty obvious, this is what we're talking about detail that I would want to know about.
So I didn't take that.
So yeah, so basically you want to see what our old scale was and what our new scale proposed is. So that would show you each position.
Like on a role basis, so I think that would be good.
Right, yeah.
And maybe this is a long scale, right? 1 through 15, and I really don't know where anyone is at in this scale, and I'm not necessarily interested in looking at individual level compensation, but to some extent, making that real of, hey, we're taking, this person from $19 an hour to $30 an hour would be something that I want to see. And so finding a way to make that a little more concrete, I think would be helpful for me too.
So yeah, we could, Ted, what you were looking at, did it show the old scale and the new scale?
So they're asking for how we came up, like individual people's pay. That's what they're asking.
Okay, but I think you're looking at positions though, right? I mean, you don't want to know what every person makes and what they're proposed to get. That's not what you're saying, right?
Like an equipment operator one.
Yeah.
What does an equipment operator one make today versus what you're proposing?
Yeah, because
Okay, maybe 5 of those folks, I don't know.
Right, are we talking about four of those people? We're talking, so we know the police, and who else exactly are we talking about? Position, I don't care about I don't care anything about the names behind those people. I just want to know specifically those positions.
Yep. So we can show you what the pay scale is currently, and then what the pay scale is proposing. So that way you would see, because you've got different, well, I don't know which, so you got the steps go across the top and then the classifications. So you would see if somebody jumped a classification. Now, some of them may not jump classification, they may stay within that classification, but maybe get a 4-step increase. That was kind of what Justin was saying.
well, yeah, it's kind of confusing when it says things like into for initial increase for police sergeant. Well, I really don't understand where a police sergeant is today and what does that mean to go to into. That's super confusing for me. And this probably helps. I think this was added to our package today. So
Yeah.
maybe there's a way for me to kind of put it all together, but I haven't had time to do that yet.
Yeah, and like you said, we just got this yesterday.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
so yeah, we were looking at this as well, because there's some other things that I was looking at. So again, I don't plan on having this, next week for you, but we just want to know what it is that you're comfortable with. Again, it's a lot of it's budget.
Yep.
If you're going to say that just seems too much, can we phase it in or something? We could look at that.
The $118,000 that's proposed, what percentage of our total salary budget is that? Like what percent increase are we looking at for
So we
salaries?
have
Is
a
it
$2
over
million
100%?
personnel budget now, salary. I don't know, but 2 million would cover everything, so, we're really talking
5%.
maybe. Total personnel expenses now, salary would be 1.
Some of it may be my inefficiencies to read these spreadsheets well. I am not sure. I don't want to be too negative on the presentation. I'm just having a very hard time putting it all together and making good sense.
And a lot of it's trying to show you guys the 30,000 foot view without affecting morale, without affecting lots of different areas and
I understand.
HR that you can have
Sure.
when you have these types of discussions.
Sure.
So I'll try to get some more understandable charts and so you guys kind of have a better picture. I think I understand what you're wanting. And that's just my biggest concern, because we hear a lot of that type of.
And again, we want to have the final report for you, although, things that we used here came from that. What about, what are your thoughts on bonuses?
Well, I was just gonna ask you, I was kind of wondering,
80,000 come from? Is that extra we had in the budget that we didn't apply? to salary?
118, is that what you said?
Whatever it was that you think it'll cost to get all this increase.
So in January, we talked about,
So are we just shrinking our leftover funds, or where are we taking this from?
so what you do, and I can pull it up, our total operating revenues minus our total operating expenses, what's left over is about $123,000 right now in fiscal year 2021. Now, on our normal budget, looks like we're going under budget by 500 or 600,000 because we're transferring a lot of money into the CIP to address streets. So what my target in January was, we got to stay under that 123 number, because when S&P calls and says, your operating revenues minus your operating expenses in general, it better be a positive number. So that's where I said we can not absorb it, but
We're gonna come close to zero.
we're gonna come close to zero now, exactly.
Instead of having that.
So right now it is kind of a savings, because right now it looks like we're just going way underwater because we're transferring a bunch of money. So if you take out that transfer, you have 123,000 left. That makes sense? And again, with all the land sales, that's why we're freeing up some money, and then so in 2022, 23, that'll be a fun budget to put together, because we're gonna have some more left over in the operating
I
funds.
just want to make sure, in a different way, I don't think you're doing this, but I want to make sure that we're not taking any money from land sales and using it for raises, because we need ongoing revenue for raises, not one-time revenue.
No,
I didn't think you would, but I just.
I've been to enough council meetings.
So earlier, there was a slight discussion about benefits, and I think it was really focused more on health insurance benefits. And I know that's expensive. It's $1,000 to $3,000 a month per employee, depending on what they're getting. Do we have a good information about that? I mean, I didn't see anything in the packet about it, but I remember. Or do we? I guess the thing I'm wondering is, when an employee comes, when a potential employee comes for a job, it has never occurred to me that benefits is a high thing on their plate that they're looking for. It's something they're interested in, definitely. But if you say, hey, we've got a health insurance plan that has a $5,000 deductible versus a one with a $2,000 deductible, that's probably not going to make any difference. Okay, those two differences. Now, if you said got a health insurance plan that has no deductible, they might be more interested in that. Yeah, except that's a pretty expensive plan. I don't know what our plans do. Okay, so I just know that you can get plans all over that. Right. And I don't know when we've dealt with it in a number of years yourself personally. I don't know what that scale looks like as far as cost and premiums for those different type of plans. Can you give us some sort of a rundown about that? What's going on with the health insurance thing?
So, yeah, so one thing is, like I said, we've got a very good plan. So I think, it's individuals, $1,500 deductible.
Yeah, so the biggest thing that they looked at, and I can share you a lot of that. To answer your question, where do employees see the benefit? About year 2 of employment, they say it's a great plan. I'm staying around. That's what I've noticed. That's what I've noticed. It's not the initial hire, because the initial hire, everybody says, oh yeah, I'll sign up for your plan. But it's about once they start using it. Kind of the biggest thing since 2016 that when I kind of came and got on board, as you know, the health insurance market is ridiculously crazy, but I want to try to keep the out-of-pocket max as low as possible, as low as we can afford. Because that's, people talk deductibles all the time, but if something really happens, you're going to pay that out of pocket. You're going to pay up the co-pays, and you're going to pay that out of pocket max. So if I have, someone working for me making 40 grand, do I want them to pay $10,000 in one given year or $3,000? And a lot of times we try to design that type of plan. So what WSU did is kind of looked at those indicators like you're talking about and found that, yes, we far outbeat all our competitors. And a lot of times our competitors will have a premium plan, a mid-tier plan, and a high deductible plan. So our plan is we only have one plan and everybody gets on it, and it's like the premium plan. So they said, well, you guys are actually contributing, more to that plan for that employee than Valley Center or Park City would be, and it's the top plan. So like my suggestion, if you guys said, all right, we got to get out of this, would be to, try to get another plan in there where people can say, hey, I don't want to pay as much out of my paycheck, but I don't really need the premium plan. The catch-22 is we tried that last year and we're still working on getting option plans. The problem is we're under 50, we're age banded, and when you're age banded, your rates are set by, so all 33-year-olds in the nation, how they do is what my premium is. So it really doesn't matter if none of us even go to the hospital in 1 year, it could still raise 10%. When you get into that different type of plans, that's when they audit you as a group, and then if God forbid something happens to one of us, then our premiums kind of go up on that case. So we could talk an hour and a half on navigating those waters. However, what I can tell you is, yes, we have a very nice plan, and I think part of our discussions coming out of here has to be how do we either promote it, or if you guys would prefer, say, hey, we got too rich of a plan with less than it, which I think, in my estimation of going through all these meetings, is if we can get closer to the salaries, that means we're a little bit above everybody because we have that good healthcare plan. Or if we want to be less than salaries and have a good healthcare plan, then it leaves that, will we retain, will we attract? So it's really a game, and that's what I want you guys, that's your guys' main decision, is what type of strategy do you want going forward with retaining and attracting talent?
The only danger I potentially see with the current strategy is that we may have some folks that aren't necessarily getting the value out of the plan and would rather have a higher salary in lieu of the most premium healthcare plan that's out there. And so not having that optional plan potentially is kind of selecting how you're going to spend some of these potential earnings for them. And so that's maybe my only concern with the current strategy, although I'm in favor of having, benefits that retain our employees.
If you ask me, Ted, what would you do? That would probably, it's kind of hard because we are trying to do that, but
Yeah.
We're navigating the hard waters of that. So that's on my radar, and Tristan really did a lot of work last year with, I had to fill out, the whole city had to fill out a questionnaire of, the last 7 years, how many surgeries have you had, all that stuff. And that's step one. It fell through, so we'll continue to do that step. But I understand exactly what you're saying, and truthfully, me as a young kid coming in here, I don't really need that that nice plan. I'd rather have something that
You'd rather have a little bit more money in your
Well,
paycheck, probably.
So, if you guys are asking are we okay with you looking into it? I mean, I basically am always okay with you looking into anything you want. You're not gonna, of course you can look into, I'd take a presentation of anything you want to do a ton of work researching and do a ton of effort and hand it to me and I throw it away or not. I mean, if you're asking if that's okay, of course it's okay. The question probably that you guys have to decide is, if you really think this is a problem, you think a good quality presentation will be swaying to us, I'm wide open. I don't know. I'm super willing to look at it. Without the numbers, I can't say which way I would go on necessarily. But I would certainly be interested in looking at it if you guys think this is something would be a value add as far as giving optionality on where we spend our funds and try to keep our employees.
So Ty, you asked about bonuses. I don't know that I have a good understanding of what bonuses people are able to get today.
Yeah. So right now, and it's an old, what you guys are dealing with is what we started with when we were in the worst shape, when we were really struggling with all the land. And now we're starting to get over that. And so you guys are kind of cleaning up some of that. And so we struggled to get anything. And so what we did, I don't know, it was probably 10 years ago, was at least we came up with something. But in today's world, it's, people should be happy to get what they get. But, for example, I did it at the end of the year and spent $300 for like 5 employees. So we had some people that were here 5 years and got $25. And then we got Brian, who's been here 25 years, and he got $125. And it's only on your 5, 10, what year. So it's not like every year you're getting something. It's just you hit a milestone of 5, 10, 50. So that's what we do now, which is all state.
That's the only bonus people can get now?
Yes.
Is that how long I've been your bonus?
Yes.
No situations where there's contribution or performance-based bonuses?
No. Now, there have been a couple times when the council has said at the end of the year, we did some great land sales and we'd like to give everybody a $300 or something. But again, that was not based on anything other than, finances. So that's where
they are.
WSU came up and said, well, there are cities that are doing this now and they're more substantial. And so that was what was included in your packet is, a more substantial bonus of being here 5, 10 years or whatever. And so Ted.
Yeah, it really, but WSU, there's so many different models, but they said make it meaningful, basically. Like, don't give out $25 for your first year, and because then you get a certificate and a $25 bill. It's not that meaningful. So Ty and I were looking at different plans, and hey, you've been here 5 years. Here's a certificate, $500. That's kind of a meaningful milestone. So that's kind of where we went with their recommendation, and really we're just throwing ideas at you. There's hundreds of different types of recommendations, but this is also, I've done a little research on longevity, and they're not as popular. So when you do it off certain factors, you always want to reward performance over, hey, you've been here for 25 years. You can do the bare minimum and still. So
that's how I'm thinking about this.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I'm not sure that a bonus program that's based exclusively on how long you've been here is the thing that I would be interested in targeting. I'd rather think about a way to create meaningful incentives that recognize people's unique and above and beyond contributions.
And a way to do that would be, we will give out this many bonuses this year. It's just a matter of who we're going to, actually budget the bonus and say, we'll give these bonuses out, and then we'll do it based on performance, rather than, well, do we happen to have money at the end of the year? And then gets real, but if we said, hey, we're going to give out, this much in bonus, I don't know, unless you think that just creates a huge morale problem.
Yeah,
Who
do you want deciding?
Yeah,
That's the problem. Performance bonuses are very subject to, what your personality is. I could do the most fantastic job in the world, but I rub you the wrong way every day. And you say, there's no way I'm giving that dude a bonus.
Yeah.
I wouldn't get a bonus ever.
There's a challenge. I don't know. I don't have a ton of experience giving those. I don't know if some of you guys are, the mayor has some experience doing that.
I mean, I think some of the key to that is not having to be one person that decides if the contribution is the thing that gets the bonus. If you're gonna do contribution-based bonuses, and I don't think I would set and say we are for sure gonna give out this number of bonuses, but I'd create probably a pool and say, the bonus leadership team, which is probably our directors, will meet and give out up to this amount of bonuses based on unique and amazing contributions that we've seen this year.
Yeah, but it's still gotta be submitted by your supervisor or somebody. I mean, it's gotta work its way up the ladder, and it's very subjective. How many people do you think are actually incentivized by this bonus versus having more income in their paycheck? I mean, could we not just do an annual increase in pay instead of doing a bonus? Separate from the step increases?
Yeah, so the only,
Because that's really what this is anyway.
yeah, the only thing I think, the only issue that it would be important is, there are times when somebody hits the top. So we've determined that, equipment operator 1, most we're gonna pay that position is 40,000. And if they don't do anything more to move up to equipment operator 2, they're stuck there. And doesn't mean they're a bad employee, it's just they didn't want to do anything extra, so then you would award them with a bonus because they've been here 10 years, they're a great employee, but they're not interested in moving up to the next step. They're just happy being an equipment operator. So that'd be the only time I think you would see that. The rest of the time, like you're saying, the longer you're here, the more you make. I think that's a pretty good incentive.
What about this likely bad idea? Rather than saying 5th year you get 500, 6th year you get 600, you say 5th year you get 500, year 10 you get 4,000. You add all those together and put them all in one lump sum, and then making it to 10 years is like a really big deal, and it costs us the same amount. You get to 15 years, you add 1,100, 1,200, 1,300, 1,400, 1,500 together. That is a big chunk of change all at once. And would that be I'm throwing this out as possible bad idea.
Thinking in my history, work history, I would say just past the day I needed to get that bonus and leave if I didn't like my job, and I might be in my job I didn't like for 2 or 3 years, which would make a lot of people unhappy. Besides myself.
You're talking about, you're saying we have people we don't want to keep, or then we should fire them, I guess, right?
Well, they might be doing an adequate job. but
Well, then holding them that extra years might be worth it, right? And that's the point of the whole thing.
I've made some really healthy bonuses in my lifetime too, and it was based on projects I've worked on. But that still was very subjective. And there were people that didn't get it, and I can understand why they were kind of felt left out. Like the secretaries didn't get a bonus because they weren't correctly working on this project, but yet they were supporting all the people that were working on the project. So.
Yeah, my experience is you're not gonna solve this problem. There is no right answer. What I think is probably the best thing to do is, if you're gonna do a bonus program, is to say, this is the pool of money. City manager, you and your staff determine how to divvy it out. And that's probably about the only thing you can do, because you're never gonna solve the person that doesn't feel they got slighted.
Yeah.
You're not gonna solve that,
But
unfortunately.
And that would work for Bel Air, but I don't think that would work for Wichita. I
Probably
don't
right.
have any clue who most of their employees are.
Right, you're probably right. And so we have to look at the dynamics of the organization here and not another organization, because they're a different organization, okay? And so if we're gonna do anything like this, that's what I would propose. If you look at it as something that is just, here's the pool of money, and we authorize it to be spent. City manager with your staff, go through who gets what.
Well, if I were gonna do that, I would also throw in the caveat that you don't have to spend all of it.
That's right. You don't have to spend it all. And you don't get to take all.
If you can't find people that are worthy, then save it for next.
That's true. That's just my 2 cents, but, okay.
I don't have a ton of experience, so I'm fine with that.
That would be the way I would want to do it too. A bonus just strictly based on tenure is my least favorite of all the options.
Well, I'd rather see a salary increase based on tenure. If I didn't, in the case the guy's happy being equipment operator 1, he doesn't want to be a lead. he doesn't want the extra responsibility. Give him a little extra money because he's been here a long time and we value him.
Yeah, I think, maybe, evaluating a potential way for people to get out of sequence or out of bulk step increases would be a worthwhile conversation, you know, as there are individual cases that maybe warrant somebody getting an increase that's outside the traditional, everybody gets a step increase this year is a process I would certainly be interested in thinking about.
It's just because we stopped there, the real reason why we shift, you know, new salary studies is for that equipment operator at the end of, that's why we shift our scale. So that's a great example. You know, I don't think we need I think all we need is a good managed city that does salary studies on every 5-year basis. Yeah, and that's what keeps people from tapping out, in my opinion.
And the way, and so, and again, it depends on what the raises are, because in the past, what we would do is, let's say, council would say, we're gonna do a 2% cost of living, and then if you are eligible for a step increase, you get that as well. So that cost of living would automatically shift it over. And so that's where you would deal with the person that was capped out. They didn't get a step because they were at the top, but they got a cost of living raise. So we don't do that anymore. It's more based on, you know, step increase, based on merit. So then that's how, as Ted's saying, the scale gets stuck. And so then we should look at it like what we're doing now.
Let's throw a different example out. We hire somebody who's mentally handicapped, and they are fantastic at running the lawnmower, but that's all they're ever gonna do. Why shouldn't he get an increase?
He will.
Yeah, he would.
No, he won't get a step increase because he's not taking on additional responsibilities. He's not
Oh, you
doing
mean
anything more.
if they cap out?
No, even you've got your step increases based on them taking on a little bit more responsibility.
An extra step increase more than just the regular one. They would get a regular step increase, they just wouldn't
So
like
I'm
it.
guaranteed every year I work here, the next step.
If you pass the evaluation with,
So what are the merits for the evaluation? I mean,
job knowledge, attendance, initiative.
There's a whole.
There's 14 point evaluation, takes a lot of time and we take
So
it
that's
very
my
seriously.
example, he's not gonna show a lot of initiative, he needs to show up every day and do a perfect job.
If I can. If we have somebody who's not performing up to standard, they're not going to be here, they're not going to last, because they're going to have a below acceptable evaluation. So if we have somebody that's meeting expectations, doing the things that they're supposed to do, that, okay, that's the standard, they're going to get their increase. It's when they fall below that and they get put on a work performance plan to increase their abilities, and we help them through that because we want a productive employee instead of an unproductive employee. They run the risk of not getting that annual rate increase.
Okay.
But that's up to the directors and the supervisors to ensure that person is meeting expectations. They don't have to be an outstanding employee, which would be the O, the 5, the extreme on the high side, in order to get their evaluation. We have a minimum work standard that is somewhere right there that meets expectations that they need to meet.
Okay, but you're still telling me he stepped out after 15 years. And I'm saying I don't think we should do that.
And our solution is pay studies that shift the whole scale over.
I mean, we should do something more than cost of living, is what I'm saying. You know, he could do a perfect job for the city for 40 years and retire as a lawnmower.
The problem is you cannot pay a lawnmower person $100,000 a year, no matter how good they are at it. You just cannot. I mean, there are organizations that have done that, and it does not matter how good you are at mowing the lawn, you don't get paid $100,000 a year to do it.
You can certainly fire him and replace him at a lower cost, but why would you do that?
We don't want to do that, which is why you have to cap it out. Otherwise, you do end up having to fire them, because at some point you look at your budget and say, we can't spend $100,000 for someone we could replace for 50.
You can't pay above market for services, right?
Yeah.
But I just want to make sure that I'm clear. I think what I'm understanding is for the step increase, employees have to be at least meeting expectations, and the council approves the step increase for that year. Is that accurate? It's both of those things have to be true? Right.
Not for the individual employee, but in mass.
Well, yeah, the council has to budget for.
The council approves the bulk, everybody gets a step increase.
Because everything goes through time.
Yeah, and then if they don't hit a standard or above, then they're put on a probationary period, and they don't get a raise, their step increase. Yeah.
Okay, well, they're automatically getting a step increase. I don't even see the point of these annual bonuses. I'd rather go back to subjective, you did a good job, than automatically give you a bonus when you're automatically getting a raise.
And I think that's what Justin and the mayor were saying, is that you put it set aside, and then I work with our directors on, okay, for each department, what would be a bonus? How do we determine bonuses? What's it based on? Those type of things. It's not on longevity, it's on other criteria.
Because I'm super empathetic to you handing someone a $25 gift card after 5 years. I mean, that's just, whatever we decide, I think that should not happen anymore. That's not, I mean, you could literally spend more on their plaque than you gave them in money. I mean, if you want, I mean, that has to cease.
I can argue it takes more, we spend more on buying a gift card, a $25 gift
Yeah,
card.
then the gift card.
Encoding the expense.
Yeah. I totally agree that's, that's an old, I'm sure that's something maybe you inherited or whatever, I don't know how that came about, but.
So with this issue, we want to give our city manager some direction of what we want to do.
Ty, what do you think about the bonus pool idea? I mean, do you think that's gonna cause problems? Do you think that just makes your life harder? Or do you think?
So, yeah, I'd like to, I've got good department directors. I'd like to sit down with them and say, okay, let's get some information. Let's think through this. Given what your direction is, what could we do? And let us come up with some thoughts on that. And then I think as far as the pay scale, what we'll do is we'll get the information so you can see the old one and the new one. So you can see what jobs are actually getting a pay increase, and which ones are staying. Because there are some that are staying the same, that we are very competitive and they don't need any pay adjustment. So you'll see those. And then we'll get the final report and then bring all that to you to make a final decision on if you're ready to adopt a new pay scale.
Okay. Very good.
That sounds good to me.
Okay, so in your packet, you have this draft proposal for longevity bonus, and I'll just give you a little residency. Yeah, I'm sorry. I said the wrong thing. Thank you. Residency bonus. And I'll give you a little background. Years ago, I worked for a company that had a little bit of an attendance problem. Getting people to come to work on time, they would find reasons to take off in the middle of the day, go to doctor appointments, dentist appointments, all that kind of thing. And rather than do the point system about, which you probably have experience where, if you miss, you get so many points, you get disciplinary action, all that kind of stuff. They came up with something I thought was very ingenious. They said, no questions asked. You work your 40-hour schedule. You're here at 7 o'clock, you don't leave until 4 o'clock, and that was your scheduled time. You get 2-hour bonus every week if you work a full 40 week. Now, in a 40-hour week, you got a 42-hour pay, is what happened, okay? Is what they did. If you missed for any reason, didn't matter what the reason was, you were late, whatever it was, you just gave you a bonus that week. And it was just that kind of run. It was amazing how it changed the attitude of people and their needs to be at work and go to doctor's appointments, and how they figure out how to schedule those appointments around so they could be at work. It just changed their perspective. So, I don't know, maybe it was 2 years ago, we were talking in a budget workshop or something like that, and I said, how about we do something to help encourage employees to live in Bel Air? Council members have to do that anyway. If we leave the town, we automatically resign, right? So we don't do that. But I just thought, and of course, you don't want to make this expensive. You want to make this an incentive to live in Bel Air for a couple of reasons. One is people who live here have more of a vested interest in the quality of the city. I'm not saying that the other people that don't live here don't have an interest in it, but there's a little bit of a different perspective there when they actually live here. And so I just kind of threw this idea together, and I think I wrote this on Sunday afternoon or something like that. I actually had a proposed form for it, but I didn't get it back. At least I don't see it here, and that's okay. It's a big deal because it's just a concept idea. It can be changed, it can be modified, it can be thrown in the trash, whatever you think you want to do. But it was just an idea. I crunched some quick numbers on this. If you paid this just flat out $10 a week bonus, what it amounts to, it would cost the city if you had 50 employees, which we don't have 50 employees who live in Bel Air, but if we had 50 employees who live in Bel Air, it costs $26,000 a year. Okay, this bonus. So it's not a huge expense to the city, but it is an incentive to the employees that all other things being equal, I'm looking to move, where am I gonna live? Bel Air has an incentive there to stay here or to be here.
I like your idea. I'm wondering, for an incentive to drive a behavior, it's gotta be meaningful enough to drive that behavior. And I don't know if, as proposed, if it would actually make a difference for anyone or not.
Yeah, and I don't either. The other side of it is I didn't want to get it so expensive that
Yeah.
it was a burden on the city. So, so I tried to have a meeting. That's where I came up with the $10 a week thing, or it's actually $20 every 2 weeks, is 26 payrolls a year, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why it comes up to $520. But it's just really, you say, yeah, I'm living here, and we certify that you're living here, and, we do simple procedures for verifying that they're really a city resident, and they get the bonus. If they move for any reason, they get the bonus.
Why don't we consider something other than cash? Say free trash, free recycling. I'd almost say free water, but that can get really expensive.
I think you're gonna get into some problems on tax law if you end up with those.
It's still income.
Yes, that's the problem, it's income. And that's where it comes in tax law, and then it becomes a nightmare for Ted to try to figure out, okay, the tax bill was, or the water bill was,
We prefer cash around here.
Cash is always good. But again, we're talking about whatever $20,000 or whatever that has to be in the budget someplace, whereas trash service, I don't think has to, because it's covered anyway.
Yeah, we're talking a lot smaller amount than 20. I mean, there's really, again, I would say the budget's not going to have a negative effect if you adopt this plan. I mean, it's not that many employees will.
What do you think about it? Do you think how do you think it'll affect your guys' employees?
I think,
I'm
we kind of talked about it. I think it depends on the employee and the amount.
Right.
For, a front staff person, if it was an extra 5,000, yeah, I think that would make a big difference. If it's, $200, I don't think it would make any difference. So I think it's really kind of what your thought would be on that amount. If you, basically what John's saying, if you were going to give free utilities, that's $100 a month. So you're looking at $1,200, would be basically free utilities. Now would somebody move here for $1,200? And again, it's like the mayor said, if everything's equal, if you're just looking for a house, but you knew that if it was in Bel Air, you get an extra $1,200 a year, maybe.
I think there's a lot, when you think about where you live, there's a lot of factors in that, and the numbers as far as finances that you're gonna consider
as far as where you live, are all way, way bigger numbers than this. So I'm not sure. I mean, I think, encouraging people to be close and live locally makes complete sense. I just, if I'm gonna think about renting an apartment, let's say, we don't have apartments, or just imagine to me, I mean, that's like $1,000 a month, another one's $800 a month. That's gonna be like a bigger factor. And then, whether it has a garage or a carport or whatever, I mean, I just think that those factors are so much bigger than this particular proposal. This wouldn't make a big enough dent. And if we did a big enough number to make it meaningful, we would be putting more pressure on a budget and we talk about it more seriously. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but that would be my concern.
My own perspective is, when I'm looking for a place to live, I have certain things I want that house to live in, to look like, and I'm gonna look and find that place. If I knew that this bonus was here, I would say, okay, I'm gonna limit my search to Bel Air. Without the bonus in place, I'd say it's wherever I want to go. As long as within the metropolitan area, whatever. That's my perspective on it. I've looked at way too many more houses I should have.
At $520 a year, I mean, your rent would have to be like this super incredibly similar, or house cost, or your house payment have to be so incredibly similar for $500 to be the thing that tips the difference.
Usually, I mean, I don't know about you, but when I look at the place, I say, this is how much I'm gonna spend, and that's why I stick with it.
You're talking about $100,000, $150,000 house, $500. You literally could, negotiate that. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't think that number is big enough.
Yeah, you're probably gonna be paying $800-900 a month for a house. $20 isn't gonna sway you one way or the other. To live
No,
north
if
of
it's strictly a
37
number
instead of
thing, you're right.
37.
If it's strictly a number thing, you're right. It isn't one way. I get that.
There's maybe a little bit of, maybe pride that comes along with it. Hey, I'm getting an extra $20 a week or a paycheck because I do live here in Bel Air, which is maybe a morale booster. I could see maybe something around that, but I think I agree with Councilmember Schroeder that as you evaluate all the factors when you're thinking about where you're going to live, location, where your family and friends live, where you go to church, what your taxes, insurance, schools are, I don't know. I think the number has to be a lot bigger before it becomes an influencing factor.
I think it's something we should, I don't know how many years, but if we could get to the point we can afford bigger numbers, it's something to consider. I think it's it's a good thought.
Yeah, because I think there is value in having, folks live in Bel Air that work here. That is a really valuable thing that I'd love to incentivize.
That's fine. That's my ideas.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you bringing ideas. I mean,
Yeah, I like
no bad ideas. But
All right. Is this next item, what are we looking at timeline?
Probably 30 minutes.
I could use it.
Ask for 10 minute break.
That sounds good.
What do you think about the county taking over the dog stuff? I know we've talked a lot about the animals and.
Well, it's certainly, I've lived here a long time, and it's certainly never been, perfection. But, I don't know that this is gonna fix it. I mean, you pointed at me and what have you, and rabbit skunk. Sure. I wasn't waiting on anybody else. I got me a big stick. And me and the rabbit skunk went
Yeah, yeah.
And I was glad that they came and picked it up. 'Cause I was not looking forward to, what am I gonna do with this thing now that it's the yard ornament?
Yep.
But again, I'm not necessarily the average Bel Air person. I grew up on a farm, you know, I mean, I didn't, there were a lot of things I did with animals back then. People go, you did that, why? You know, I was either do this right now and take a little bit of chance on getting hurt a little bit, or I'd be chasing something for, you know, a week. You know, and when I saw that skunk coming in,
You're like, let's go.
I didn't take a poll. Is it okay if I think that they got a skunk? Wow.
Justin, you need a Dr. Pepper?
I'm probably okay.
Okay. Do you need
I probably have enough caffeine.
Okay.
I'm gonna grab it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's 9:30 already. Where's time go?
Did you work out before you came?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Can't make any excuses. You find one excuse, you'll find an easier one every time. Just gotta go every day.
You don't ever have to.
How are you doing, Diane?
Um,
So, yeah.
Okay.
Upset, I had Chief, but I should have had that before.
I think Ty has figured out that he just loads my baskets specifically with Reese's.
Yeah, I remember. Maybe not.
As
far as I'm concerned, there's really not any need for anything but the Reese's.
Yeah, I know, but I didn't even get a basket. Clearly, I'm on a diet. It's not like I get.
Huh.
Anything good in here? I had Nutter Brothers. I complained about not having Nutter Brothers, and I'm looking for something else. Yeah. Chocolate's gonna kill me if I have this, so.
Oh, you know, something else that, while we're just sitting there, we talked with the animal control. So one thing that almost happened this year, and it was going to affect you guys, is that, so the way our current animal control works is that there's a process that you go through within the city, and it can end up in the city court. Well, that's what the chief would, and Jackie were getting at, is it all goes to county court. So we had the way it works now is that we have a dangerous animal ordinance. So who declares the dangerous animal? So there's certain criteria. It has to have bitten like a couple people, or different. There's criteria it has to meet, and then it's ultimately the chief that identifies that as a dangerous animal. So there's always a due process. So if they want to appeal the chief's decision that it's a dangerous animal, they appeal it to the city council. So, so it would have been you all making the decision whether that was a dangerous animal or not. And that all goes away with the county.
Right.
But we were very close, because chief and the person that had this dangerous animal came within, they had 2 weeks to appeal it, and they actually came in the last day and was talking to Jackie and the chief about the process to appeal it, and it would have came to you all to determine if that was a dangerous animal.
So they would have brought the
So-
dog to council for interview or.
Yeah.
Up to you, you can see the dog.
Video
whatever you
evidence.
wanted to do, and, but yeah, that was, so it didn't happen, but, that's one of the benefits of the county taking it over. Now it's out of your, purview to determine whether it's dangerous.
I'm glad we didn't. All right, well, it's not 10 minutes yet, but it's not a formal meeting either, so.
Yeah.
Still
We
spreading
ready?
it
Ready?
around.
Are we ready? Let's do it. Let's do it. All right, community events.
So the first thing is, and we've talked about this, the struggle that we have getting volunteers. And over the last several years, it's in your packet, really it's fallen on the city. And what ends up happening is that we get a few, Lions are always good about volunteering, we may get one or two, but in the end, it's city staff. And since the recreation department has taken it over, they'll even bring in and pay umpires and different things to come and work events. So there's the cost of the event, and then there's the cost that's of labor that we don't include in the cost of the events. So this year, council budgeted, I think it was 12,000 for community events. You know, there was discussion about the chamber taking that over, and that didn't happen. So now we just need some direction from you all is, you know, do you want the city to continue offering those? Do you want, how many do you want? We kind of put together what we have done in the past and how many volunteers we need and things like that. So, you know, our recommendation is if you want us to do it, the things that were the most, to get the most comments from would be, and actually it's our first year to do the 4th of July event, but everybody enjoyed it. It doesn't take a lot of volunteers. The Christmas event's always enjoyable, and then I think it was the Fall Festival that was the other one. So again, you know, we would recommend narrowing it down to a few if you think it's our responsibility to do, but we just need your direction.
Well, I looked at this and I understand what you're saying about the cost and the volunteers. But the other side of it is these are things that make Bel Air community desirable. And they are pretty well attended. I've never seen a fall fest or a spring festival that was lacking for people, okay? And so I would really encourage us to see if we can't find ways to work these and continue doing it. Maybe we need a bigger net of how to get volunteers. I don't know. I get that there are struggles there, but that's just my thought on it. I'd hate to cut back on any of it personally. Okay?
What if we did something like the River Festival and sold buttons or something to help defer the cost?
Sure, I mean, that's an option. I think they've done that in the past. I've seen some old Bel Air buttons and stuff. The only downside is how do you enforce it? You know, and maybe you don't, maybe it's just, you know, buy a button to support the event.
Yeah.
What I think I've seen is more so than just the dollars for the events, because if the actual dollars at the door isn't that large on these events, it's how do we dedicate staff time to it when our staff runs a pretty lean operation, you know, adding these responsibilities of event planning, event running, event execution, in addition to their typical jobs, I think is the real constraint in my mind.
I agree, but I was just thinking if we could raise some extra funds, we could pay some people.
I mean, I think if we're talking about what we make up buttons, if we're gonna pay some people, we could just pay some people, but that's easy to say, incredibly hard to do. How do you pay someone who's gonna be good, qualified, knows what they're doing, has experience doing it, knows how the ins and outs of the city works? You know, just try to find someone you can pay for a short period of time, 4 times a year, that's gonna be as good at it as Tristan with all the experience she's had doing it. And that person, that person is not alive.
available that I'm aware of. Or, I don't know if it's Tristan, I threw that name out there, maybe it's other people, who knows, but.
Another question, not putting Tristan down, but what if we contacted somebody like Wichita Festivals? To help think about how we can do things. What's that?
I hear they're looking for something to do.
Yeah, and that's the issue that a lot of cities, they, like the chamber, like Valley Center, the chamber does some of their events and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, in other communities, there are groups that do that.
Yeah, the other interesting thing is, here we are in 2021 and COVID is still something that seems like it's going to be around for a little while. And so that'll, at a minimum, likely make what the Spring Festival would typically be look quite a bit different. And I think we also heard that there is future interest from the chamber at re-looking at taking on some of these events. So we may be talking about a plan for 2021 that potentially looks different than what it might look like in 2022 or 2023 once we're past COVID and maybe we have some additional chamber involvement.
Yeah, in principle, I think it makes sense for the city being super supportive of these type of things. They are what makes, as the mayor said, part of what is, police, providing the facility, yada, yada, super supportive, financially supportive. I agree with that. But I also agree that it'd be really great to get out of sort of the planning aspect of it as well. So I'd love to continue to figure out a way to make that happen. Getting volunteers to do it of course sounds wonderful, but I think we've been trying that for however many years, and that's probably not going to happen unless someone has a fresh idea on how to do that. But I don't. As someone who's worked with a lot of nonprofits, getting volunteers is an incredibly difficult thing. Anyway. So I think I concur with Justin that maybe this year these events are going to be. Maybe we even don't have it because it's so unique of a year with COVID still lingering here, or whatever. And then the next year, see if us supporting the chamber providing some of that planning and the city getting out of the planning, though still providing, support for it might be a possibility. Do we think that is realistic or?
Well, I think that the spring event, because of the COVID issue, is I think the plan to do the aid drop or whatever it was that they did last year is probably the appropriate thing to do, because I don't see a lot of vaccines that rapid. It's still not a vaccine we're dealing with. But unless we're completely off the mark on this whole herd immunity thing, come the fall, we're going to have it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll probably have it before that. Come the fall. Just throw some quick numbers out there. It's already been estimated about a third of the nation has herd immunity just naturally. So if you can get another 40 or 50%, you're there.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't need 100% herd immunity. You'll never get that anyway. That's just a habit. So, you can get the other 30 or 40 or 50% with vaccinations, you're going to be there. And I think that's realistic that you can see that by the fall.
So which one, you're suggesting we not do the spring festival is kind of the one that your recommendation?
Yeah, I think
Sort of.
basically what we were talking about, I think that would be a struggle anyway.
Right.
Because that's coming up in March.
So
So our next one would be July.
So it sounds like what we could say here is this year the spring festival is going to be different anyway. It's going to be stripped down to a degree. Is that right? We could do that. We do the other ones like your recommendation says, but then the next year, or let's talk. Let's talk about it again. Maybe get the chamber. If that doesn't go, I guess I don't know. I guess we'll have to rediscuss it. But I'm empathetic, very empathetic on getting the city out of planning these events. I mean. Not out of supporting the events, but out of the planning of them.
From an event perspective, the 4th of July event that we did last year and the holiday event both had firework displays. With the changes out here with the land sales, do we see an issue with having a venue for that in the future?
There could be, but I think we could move it. So what you're saying is in fact, this may be, what across from City Hall may be gone, but we own some land up there across from the high school. There's some floodplain area there. And so we could move them there, and then we have to work with the school district, but then people could park at the high school.
We still see a path to having those types of events, just in a different venue.
Talk about fire.
Yeah.
As long as it's not raining. Always safe in July.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is we'll go with what we had planned, because the spring with the egg drop would be tough anyway. We might be able to do something like we did last year where we have eggs left over.
Right.
And something like that, but community events, we'll plan on maybe the 4th, the fall festival, and something Christmas.
So it looked like your proposal here was to do the egg drop, the 4th of July, and the holiday event without a spring festival or a fall festival.
Okay, that's it, so I couldn't remember the fall
Yeah.
festival or.
You didn't have the fall festival.
Yeah, the fall
I'd like to put it in, I'd like to see it.
Okay.
That's what I'm hearing, or I'm suggesting.
Oh, man, there's 3 and there's 3. So you added 1 and took 2 away, you took away spring.
Yeah,
So,
Egg drop is
is the replacement.
oh, egg drop is the spring.
Yes.
Right. So what happened last year is they couldn't do the spring festival because of COVID, so they released this egg drop.
Right.
It was really well received. And because we still are dealing with the COVID issue, I think it's probably appropriate to do that again this year.
And is the spring, what we did last year spring, is that significantly less planning as far as staff time it would be?
And that's pretty simple because it's just a egg hunt basically. So people would show up and we did have some bouncy things and stuff like that, but because of COVID, I think we've got some more eggs left over from last year that we could do the egg drop again, like, police or something like that. So that would be basically the spring festival or event, whatever you want to call it. Then we have never, last year was our first year at the 4th of July event, and everybody liked it, had a lot of positive comments. Doesn't take a lot of time. It's just getting the fireworks where people are going to go, that kind of stuff. The fall festival takes more time because then you're back to getting bouncy houses and petting zoo and all that kind of stuff. Vendors, vendor fair, car show, that kind of stuff. So.
Usually won't make any more trouble,
What's that?
So in that, if we do the egg drop, 4th of July, the holiday festival, and the fall festival, we'll actually be adding events over what we've done in the past.
Yeah.
I like the 4th of July event and the holiday event. I think they're different events than what other cities do, and that differentiates us a little bit. Whereas fall festival is a really common community event that lots of other cities are going to be doing on the same weekend. Likely that we will. So if I were going to pick, the fall festival might be the one that I would reduce this year.
I don't like the idea of adding from what we've done previously. I mean, to me, that's almost a little bit backward. Not backwards in number of events, but as far as backwards in number of events I'd like to see staff be in charge of planning. If someone else wants to plan a fall festival, I'm sure the city would have to be supportive of that, but I don't want to continue to add events that the staff is in charge of planning. And if we think the 4th of July is better received than the fall festival, then I guess maybe we can discuss which of those two. Mayor, I know you'd like to see both. If we're not in agreement on that, do you have an opinion on which of those two you like better, or?
Well, the 4th of July event was well received, but it had significant limitations to it. And it didn't have the participation that fall fest has. I know that. If it were me, I would say do the fall fest and not the 4th of July. 4th of July was done because of an anniversary.
Yeah.
So if I were to pick between those two, that would be one I would go for.
Is there our vision of 4th of July? I know we did it in a very COVID world with, would it be different? I imagine a non-COVID 4th of July would be a little bit different in the sense that people would come out maybe and actually get out of their cars and all that. Maybe there'd be more to it, or I don't know.
I do, I know what you're saying, like sitting in your car and watching fireworks compared to kind of the interaction of the Fall Fest is one definitely feels more
Well, even this
community
year,
related, you
so I
know?
went to both those events, and I will tell you that the 4th of July had maybe 200 folks, if that many, come for the picnic portion of it. Now, they had a lot more folks show up for the fireworks. I get that, okay, it made a lot of sense because of the dynamics of COVID and everything.
Yeah.
That made a lot of sense that's where it panned out. When we came to the Fall Fest, it was pretty well attended. I mean, it wasn't like it had been in past years,
Right.
but it wasn't, we had a really good group there for being in the COVID like it was. And it was definitely more than a couple hundred. You know. So that's just my, I mean, unless somebody did an official count, that's just my gut feel about I believe it's went.
I think what you're dealing with on 4th of July also is many more entities have 4th of July celebrations and, you know, and they're ongoing, they're, you know, kind of delved into and are part of history and what have you. The town where I grew up has a huge, and it's not a big town, okay, but they have a huge 4th of July celebration. And so I wasn't here for that. I also wasn't there for that one, but I was coming back in and saw the 4th of July as you were shooting off fireworks and some things like that. But I was kind of curious because when shooting off fireworks, about done. And I was headed home. I wanted to get home and get in the garage and what I could do before. And make sure that my house wasn't on fire because, you know, we had the one house fire and it was just kind of corner across from my house. So, and it's only happened once in, you know, that long. But that's what you're dealing with there is that you've got lots of other places. And, you know, I went somewhere else where I have relatives and that type of thing. Just for something different and something to do and, you know, those kinds of things. So you've got a lot of competition there. And I don't know how expensive fireworks.
I think the fireworks thing is an interesting problem, put it that way. As long as we're selling fireworks and allowing them to be shot off in the city, we're not gonna have near the attendance at an event like that. My neighbors across the street were putting off stuff that was almost as big as what was delivered.
I bet there will be.
And they could have possibly been as big. I don't know how legal what they had was.
Well, they went over Missouri.
You don't listen, way long word when you're talking about.
Yeah, once that fuse is lit, it's legal.
And really, all we looked at on our recommendations is what takes the least amount of staff time planning.
That was where we, Fall Fest takes a lot of staff time, I say.
Yeah.
And so, Ty,
It's bigger deal.
Can you give us some perspective on, if we do the fall festival, what kind of an impact is that gonna have on staff? And what are things that won't get done in favor of that getting done? What's the opportunity cost of the fall festival?
So, I don't know that, so what we did was Tristan used to do it and it really was an inconvenience for City Hall. So we moved it to the rec center, which helped, because then Tristan wasn't taken away from HR and communications, all the other things she was doing. So really, that helps. Now, what you run into is that, you know, we've got good staff, and so Ashley's been taking it over. So she's got things that she's planning as well for the rec center. Although it was different this year, it really wasn't a bad year because of all the COVID things, and you know, the rec center was down as far as activities and stuff. So, but it'll ramp up. So she'll be doing other things. And so really what you see is that for her, for me, for a lot of us that kind of help, it's just extra time that we're doing. And, you know, it's not anything different there. The issue is that she needs volunteers to help set up things, take down things. She doesn't have them. So then what they do is they pay staff, part-time staff to come in and do it. So the cost there to do that is probably, you know, $500 to pay part-time people to come in and help where volunteers don't. The rest of it is, you know, the rest of us are just Brian and I and everybody else is out there. We just work it, and, you know, if there's some time we can take off somewhere, we do, but that usually doesn't happen. And it's not like that's what we do it for anyway. But there is a cost of, you know, extra basically paying volunteers, just probably around $500.
Well, I think we're only at this point, based on everything I'm hearing, is that we should do the egg drop, the holiday event, and the fall festival, and not continue the 4th of July event this year.
I agree with that. You know, I know the extra 500 is annoying, that I guess I'm just willing to pay for it to do it or whatever.
Well, and this is a suggestion, okay? So I would volunteer. I never know of the opportunity, okay? And if I know of the opportunities, I'll put it on my schedule so I can do it. And I surmise that may be, I'm not saying the council member should, but that may be the way a lot of people are. We don't really know what the opportunities are. So how can we maybe expand communication about the opportunities to volunteer and look at those and say, okay, I need people, for instance, and I don't want to brag on this too much. You know, I coordinate this Warming Souls project for my church. Well, that takes 30 or 40 people. And I get those people volunteers. I don't really have to work at that. They come to me and want to do it, okay? And that's pretty cool. Now, we put some notices in the bulletin and that kind of stuff, but it's not a big job to get the people. And so I mean, this isn't the same as that. That's helping homeless people, and this isn't helping homeless people. This is helping us help people who are doing or okay. But when I do that, I tell them this is what I need. I need people to make sandwiches. I need people to cook entrees, and I tell them when they need to do that, okay, and what we provide for them. But I'm not, and I'm not trying to fault anybody. I'm never hearing what those opportunities are, okay? So if somebody like Ashley could sit down and say, well, we need somebody to help put up this between, you know, 2 and 4 o'clock on Saturday. Okay, I can put that on my calendar, I can come over and do that, but if I don't know that that's what's needed, then I can't plan on it, okay? And so that's kind of where I'm coming from. If we could find those tasks out ahead of time and then communicate out to a lot of people.
Ty, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I would have to imagine recruiting volunteers for a citywide event is actually way harder than at something as small as a church. A church, if I got someone to ask them, they have to keep seeing me every Sunday, you know, there's some connection there to get people to volunteer. But I mean, I'm empathetic that I feel like ever since I've ever paid attention to Bel Air stuff, we've been talking about getting more volunteers. I assume it's just really, really hard. I mean, you just don't have, you know, I mean, you literally could walk around and ask everyone in this building and have it easier for them to say yes, because they have to see you every day if they tell you no, whereas putting it on a website or mailing it out, no, there's no that connection there to get people to volunteer at something like a church size organization. It's so easy to ignore. And so I have to imagine it's incredibly hard for you guys. Maybe I'm sticking up for you, you don't deserve it, I'm not sure, but I imagine it's gotta be incredibly hard.
If we have hourly staff that's interested and willing to work as paid volunteers for these events, I think that is a great thing to do, because I think the event's important, and we know that those folks are reliable, and you know, they're great contributors, and folks are interested in that opportunity, I fully support continuing to do that.
There's a limited incentive to volunteer. I think you've got to really care about your community to be volunteering to set up for something like that. You're not getting any financial back out of it. You're not even getting free admission because admission is free.
Or just even sort of the social benefit isn't clear either, like in church, there's like this, I mean, the smaller thing, there's like this connect, in the city, it's just hard to even have that clear social benefit.
That's where the Lions are great, because they do it as a social group.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why they're so solid.
Do we do t-shirts for our volunteers?
We have, yep.
Tell me
Yeah,
about this
exactly.
egg drop. I'm not clear on that. Is that where we're just letting the kids go out in the field and pick up eggs, or is that like where we did before with the police driving?
So it used to be that it was, they would do it at the rec center and they would just spread thousands of eggs, and then everybody there at a certain time, you go pick them up, and then.
10 seconds are gone.
Yeah, that's kind of
About
it.
30 seconds.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It goes fast.
So, but with COVID last year just hitting, we had all the eggs, and we canceled the event, and we thought, well, what can we do for the kids that, because they can't have this now. And so then the police went and you just call and sign up basically at the rec center and say, hey, can you do that? Get an address, and then they would drop them off at the front.
How did people find out how to call and sign up? Because I never saw it.
It was the social media, the police department and rec center and the city were all tweeting and putting stuff on Facebook about signing up for it. So, and I don't know, probably 200 or so
If you're
houses.
new,
or
like
something.
me, you don't know about it.
So,
You don't have kids anyway.
grandkids.
Oh, yeah.
I got a dog.
we've got some left over from last year, so that's why we could easily do it this year. I think, what's that?
Do you have enough left over?
Yeah, because I think they had like 10,000 eggs and they gave out like 5,000 or 4,000, something like that. So, yeah. Cool. So we can do that. So yeah, okay. So we've got direction, and we'll get planning and working on putting that together for those events.
The big topic for the evening, brush site.
At least when I was paper.
There's a lot of
There's a lot of things to figure out how to dispose of that egg.
So there was a lot of good reading in your packet.
Yeah.
Hopefully you all read through it all.
I didn't make it through all of it, I'm already on it.
So it's really, it comes out as one of the, it's a positive thing that we're selling land. The downside is then we lose our brush side. And then, of course, when you open, it seems like when you open something up, there's a lot of stuff that come out that you didn't think about before, and that's exactly what happened. So, we're selling, basically, we're closing 2 weeks from Friday, or a week from Friday, Gene Beverly is behind where we're at currently. So then we started looking, okay, if we're going to continue having this, where would we have it? Then we started thinking about, well, so if you're going to burn, which is typically how you get rid of this stuff, we can't have it in the middle of a housing development. And so where can we get it out at the very edge of the city? So then we thought, okay, well, we know that up there along 254, we're going to hold out that area there until we get a frontage road in there, which we know that's going to be at least 5 years, maybe longer, we don't know, but that's right at the edge of town. Well, then we started talking with Sedgwick County Fire that they have to approve burns. And so when we talked to them about getting their thoughts, then they were very concerned about having us burn on 254 because that's already dangerous, and then you have smoke going across the highway. And then they said, by the way, do you have your EPA or KDHE permits to burn and stuff besides from us, because you have to have all those permits to have a burn site, and we didn't realize we had to have that. And so just can after can after can started opening up with worms in them. And so, but the fire department said, we've done burns in situations where they named a place down south. I guess it was when a tornado went through or something was going on at Spirit. They had a whole bunch of stuff they had to burn. And so they bought one of these incinerary things. And there's pictures of them in there. And they said it's the greatest thing because it burns at so high heat that there's no smoke, and it's very safe, very efficient, all of that. Of course, there's a cost to those. Those run $40,000, $50,000 for one of those.
What about that one they use?
What's that?
What about that one they
Yeah.
use?
And then the other issue that you have to think about is it's got to be contained, because if you just have a site with brush on it, then what happens is you get old appliances, you get sofas, and things like that showing up there. So it's got to be cordoned off so that it's only open at certain times and people kind of drop things off. The other thing is that we have done in the past is we would hire basically, it's called a tub grinder, which is a huge mulcher. It's not the kind that you see where you feed it in the back, because that takes hours to go through, and then it only takes 4 inches or so trunks, and this thing could take 12 inches. So the company that we hired to do that, they charge us $2,000 to do it, and then we keep the mulch and give it away. Well, what happened is that company also sells mulch, and they realized that people were coming and getting the free mulch from us and not buying it from them, so they raised their price to $10,000 to have the tub grinder come out. So our chipping went from 2,000 to 10,000 now. And to burn, then we've got to find a location where we're not causing problems with neighbors, highways, things like that. The other issue is it is well received, and so we have cars that line up, if you've ever been out there on 53rd. So the other issue is, where are we going to park people as they're waiting to go in line? So our concern was up there on 254, was that mean we got people lining up on Rock Road? Well, that's not safe. So, so that's all of the worms that got open when we started talking about what are we going to do, and that was where my thought was, well, do we even need to continue doing that? Because as the fire department pointed out, our trash hauler will take limbs, and they just have to be cut in, I think, 4-foot lengths and bundled. So the other thing that when we were talking with Public Works is, they have to be Bel Air residents. But what they would see is we do it once a month, and the same vehicle, they were residents, but they bring truckloads. And so our concern is okay, is it really, your house that you had an issue with, is that what it is? Or is it you're helping grandma and mom and whoever, wherever they're at, because they bring a couple truckloads every month. So, then the issue is it really helping our individual homeowners? And if that's what we're here to do, can they just bundle it up and do it that way? So again, those are the struggles that we're dealing with, and we need your input on how do we move forward, and which direction do you think we should go?
Okay, I'm gonna jump in. First problem we have is we're not taking brush, we're taking logs and whole trees. And so I think we should stop doing that. Maybe anything smaller than 3 inches in diameter and go in. Not sure what rag we would put in there, but that would make it easier to mulch. I do not believe we should be burning it at all because of the carbon emissions. If we mulch it, we can spread it out and do a flat mulch. Just let it rot in place. We wouldn't have to haul it off at all. Or if the mulching company wants to mulch it and haul it off for a respectable price, we can deal with them. And if they want bigger logs, they can agree to take bigger logs. But I don't think we should take bigger logs. And I see it constantly on Facebook. People are giving away firewood. All you have to do is go pick it up. So people shouldn't have to bring it to the brush site to get rid of it. And like you said, I'm guessing they're cutting down on somebody's tree over on the west side of Wichita or something and hauling it up here to get rid of it, so they don't have to take it to the dump, pay the dump fee. So there's my jump.
Tell me more about this, the burning system. Talk about.
Yeah.
Say that again.
So it's, and I don't know a lot about it other than what I heard from the fire department, but it's this incinerator that it gets up to like 1,500 degrees. And so there's no smoke, and it just incinerates it. And so there's not much ashes left either with that high temperature. Now, they were saying, you know, you might be able to look around and find a used one for 20, 30,000 instead of paying, you know, 50 or whatever for one. But they said that that's the greatest thing they've ever seen, and they think it's an awesome, if we really want to get serious about it, that's a great way to go.
For an emergency, that might be okay, but all that ash is actually a hazardous material that we would have to haul off. We couldn't seal it in a pit.
That's the other issue is, we just put it in a pit, and that's what they recommended was, because there's certain, if you do it on a certain site that's KDHE approved, then they'll allow you to bury it there or something, but if you haul it off, then it's another issue. So we always try to bury it at that location.
We're not gonna wanna build a road over top of it.
So, right, so the other thing is, with that, it opens us up to other locations if we had that, because we're not burning them. So another location that I had thought about is right across from the high school in LaSalle. There's a floodplain area that we own, and we've always thought about, because no one's gonna buy it because it's floodplain, is we thought about putting a park there at some point. Because it's north of 53rd and west or east of Rock. And so there's, and so if we were incinerating it, you could have people could park there on the say and wait. Now we have to put up a fence or something like that. So that would be a location. It's not going to really, other than seeing some brush, there's not going to be smoke or anything when you're burning it. And then another location would be actually at the Sunflower Commerce Park. What we're working on, and this is kind of off topic a little bit, but we talked about refinancing, and you remember I said that the PDC had to own land that was like 60 acres is what it was until the debt was paid off. And so we didn't create a location for that. We've talked to Kevin Cowan and Gilmore Bell and asked them, could we reduce that? And so basically there's 2 lots over there that's still left. Well, there's others, but one of the ones that we have is it's a deep lot, and we're struggling with selling it because there's not a lot of frontage. And there's probably 10 acres. And I told Kevin, I said, what if we hold that out? And because at some time we're going to need to expand our public works facility. It's down there right up by the railroad tracks, not a lot of room to expand, a lot of brush behind there, and actually get them out of downtown and move them out to the industrial park. If we held that out, could we refinance and that would be all we need? He said, yeah, I'd feel comfortable with that. So if we actually hold that out, we would maintain that until the term of the debt was paid off. Well, so then we're gonna have that for 15 years or so, and then ultimately maybe build something there. So that would be another location we could put if we're incinerating it. Now, if we're burning it, the businesses that aren't out there are going to burn.
Incinerating or chipping?
Incinerating.
Yeah, you've got 3 levels. One is just burn it as brush and smoke goes whichever way the wind blows. One is incinerate the pit. And the third is to mulch it.
Yep. So that would be another option is, do we look at working with this company to see if they would just mulch it or, what we would do there. But
if you took the John's idea of limiting the size, can you buy, I don't know what the cost of chippers are, these tree services buy. I'm sorry?
The big truck grinders?
Well, the chippers, the tree services buy, because they'll bring them in, you can see them around, they'll bring them in and they'll just throw everything in there to trim the tree up.
That's one they use this that has like a 4x4 foot input.
Yeah, but you can't use them because, as example, because they're exclusive contractor with everything.
Well, you can't use that company, but I'm talking about that style of chipper.
But
It's
yeah,
bigger than what you're gonna actually home use, and it's gonna do more than, I've seen some logs go through one of those chippers downtown. They were cutting up a tree, and it goes through pretty darn fast. But it might take a couple of days worth of staff time to clean up a brush pile if we want logs that big come in.
Well, that's true, and so I liked your idea of limiting the size of the lot, because that made sense. If people are bringing bigger stuff, they're bringing 5, 6 diameter stuff, it doesn't make sense that they're bringing it there anyway. That's not the purpose of the brush site. Brush, that's not brush, that's lumber, almost.
Almost, yeah, he's got down here the handle, 42-inch diameter tree. I don't know if we've seen those or not going into that ton grinder. That takes a long time to burn too, no matter how you burn it.
Right, yeah.
So I think, so I'm following you. I think what Justin always brings up is opportunity cost. So if we were to buy one of those, a good size one, that would do a 3-inch in diameter, you're probably looking at 20,000. And then you're gonna have the staff time, like you said, it's probably gonna take a couple days, 3 days for a couple guys out there doing that. So then that cost is gonna add up. I would think if we wanted to be serious about continuing this, then I think it would be worth paying the 30 to 40 to get the incinerator. So, because the way it works is you get it going and then you just leave it. And then it just burns and then you just come back when you're done.
You can't just do it, you gotta have somebody man that while it's running.
That's not what the fire department said. They
Well,
said that they did one, like I said.
It will self-sustain, but I'm thinking practically you can't leave it. Somebody wanders on there, a dog falls in the hole, somebody gets thrown in on purpose. There's lots of things that can happen at an unattended
Well, it sounds like,
facility like that.
I mean, Ty knows the most about this, having talked to the fire department, and it sounds like this is an option. What about Ty having a fire official or someone with experience, presenting this to us or getting more information about it? I mean,
Yeah,
they're the only one that, I mean, we're all going off, I think of just, what you presented to us or whatever, so you're kind of knowledgeable about it. This seems something very intriguing to me as far as this is new. I'm not super sure how, it's a little bit new to me, so I'm a little hesitant, but it doesn't mean it. Oftentimes new things are really great. There's like a reason that this didn't exist before and it exists now and it's creating a place in the market, so we should maybe heavily consider it.
Yeah, the fire department said they'd be happy to come and talk to you about it. And I think to John's issue again, the piece that we have to do, regardless where that is fencing. So, because again, we're fencing it because we don't want mattresses and, washer dryers.
You gotta visit for a whole lot of reasons.
Yeah.
It's gotta be fenced.
So you think we're gonna back up
Wire
and
on the
break
top,
all
too.
kinds of crap.
So that's how you get it going and then leave it, lock it up so nobody can get in.
So, but this is a unit that's powered because it's got a high volume fan on it, if I understand it, right? Because it's really all those big bellows is what it really is, okay? I'm not comfortable with any kind of machinery run by itself on man. They're very comfortable with that.
Again, that's what they told us they did. They said they had this thing running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 2 years.
Well, then they had somebody there with a loader dumping stuff in it continuously.
I'm sure there was people there at times, but they said they just left it. Now, again, did they leave it for 8 hours or did they leave it for 2 hours? I don't know. But yeah, if you're interested.
I'd be interested. I mean, I'm not an expert and I feel like none of us are either. And I'd love to talk to someone that really has used it and knows what's safe and knows, to.
Well, it sounds like the first thing that we need to decide on is the brush site something that we can.
That's a
continue
great,
with?
that's a great point.
Which I think it's a highly valued amenity in our community. I think people really value it. I think the turnout that we see, even if some of it is, I went over and helped grandma trim her trees last week and I did mine this week. And so maybe I'm there twice this month. I think that's fine. That's, not commercial use. I would maybe feel different about commercial use, but I think it's something that people really value. And if there's an economical way to continue to do it and put it in a location where we're not going to move it every couple of years and it makes sense to do that. I don't know that having our public works folks have to take their tape measure out and measure to see, hey, is this stuff 3 inches? Sorry, you can't come in today. Is something that I really want to put them in a position of having to do. And so if we're going to do it, let's just set ourselves up to really do it and go forward with that.
The 3 inches would be kind of a judgment call on those parts, but you can tell that's not 3 inches. Okay, that's 3 inches.
So I tend to agree that it seems like, I don't know, I'm not a brush person, but if, I think it's something that's valued in Bel Air, is the best of my understanding. You get a lot of calls, everyone asking what it is, right? That's why I think, okay, so this seems like if you're getting a bunch of calls asking where it is, people seem to care about it, seems a valuable thing. So even though I'm personally not like a big user or anything, it seems like something we should continue to go in and.
I'd care about it too if I was cutting a tree down, because it cost me probably $80, $100 to haul it off to the county dump. Free is great. We did that with Christmas trees and some other trees that were Christmas trees at the mulch site after Christmas. They did happen to be evergreens, but they weren't set up in anybody's living room. So, other stuff filters in.
Okay, so it sounds like we should do some more research on this.
And I really do like the idea of the Sunflower Farmers Park. If you find a place that's there that could be a permanent site, I think that's fantastic. I would much rather have something that's permanent that we don't intend to ever sell.
Right.
Okay, and we'll just keep it.
This is a site that we're dedicating for public usage.
Right.
And still, though, if you're burning and leaving ash there, that's water runoff.
Well, and again, what I'll do is I'll have the fire department come in and they can explain how that, because I just heard them in a 20-minute talk.
Well, and I don't know, if the fire department, it'd be good to hear from them. It looks like we actually got an information packet from somebody that sells this. And so I'm sure in the interest of trying to sell one of these, that hopefully they would be interested in coming down and giving us their sales pitch.
Yeah, but they're in Florida, so.
Oh, are they?
They're gonna come over here.
Oh, they might Zoom us a sales pitch.
Yeah, exactly.
They may have a local sales guy, yeah. That'd be-
It's a piece of
We've
equipment.
got the internet.
It's a piece of equipment, but you have to find a place to store also.
That'd be another thing to consider, but I'm super interested in the presentation and considering, because I do think it's a valuable thing. We should continue to try to find a way to provide if we can in a reasonable way.
And based on my limited understanding of the incinerator, that's probably my preferred option to further investigate, at least at this point.
Well, and
I don't know, when I took and brush up there, it's, I had to cut down a mulberry tree once that suddenly grew by my house. It seemed like overnight, and it got so big so fast, I had to put it down, took it over there. I don't know that I would have wanted the mulch from that. You know?
I did.
That is kind of a header to taking free mulch.
Okay, so, anything else? So, that's the end of everything that's on the agenda. Are there any other topics we would talk
Not at 9:30.
about? Okay, if nothing else, I guess we're adjourned, and we'll see everybody Tuesday night. Very good. Okay. Everybody ready? Yes. Of course, I have to work. Whatever works then. Yeah.